The 33rd session of the Senate in the 3rd regular session of the 19th Congress is hereby called to order. May I call on Senator Nancy Binay to lead the chamber in prayer. You may proceed, ma'am.
Sa ngalan ng Ama, Anak, Espiritu Santo, mahal naming Diyos, aming ipinagpapasalamat ang mga biyayang aming natanggap at tatanggapin pa mula sa inyong wagas na pagmamahal. Dalangin po namin na kami patuloy ninyong basbasan at patnubayan upang magampanan namin sa araw-araw ang aming mga tungkulin at responsibilidad sa bayan at sa aming kapwa. Sa iyo po naming itinataas ang buong buwan ng Disyembre at ang nalalapit na Kapaskuhan. Sa amin pong paghahanda para sa kapanganakan ni Kristo, pag-alabin po sana ninyo ang pag-asa sa aming mga puso. Muli po ninyong ipaalala sa amin na ang tunay na diwa ng Pasko ay ang pagbabahagi ng liwanag at kabutihan sa aming kapwa. Amang makapangyarihan, tulungan niyo po kaming ipagdiwang ang biyaya ng buhay, pamilya at pagkakaisa bilang isang bayan. Maghari nawa sa bawat isa ang kapayapaan at pagmamahal tungo sa pagbuo ng mas matibay na bansa na puno ng malasakit sa isa't isa. Dalangin din po namin ang katahimikan ng kaluluwa ni dating Senadora Santa Nina Rasul, matamasa nawa ng kanyang pamilya ang kapayapaan na hatid ng kabuuan ng inyong pagmamahal. Ang lahat ng ito, aming hinihiling sa ngalan ng Ama, Anak at Espiritu Santo. Amen.
Amen. Secretary is directed to call the roll.
Roll call of members. The Honorable Senator Binay, Senator Cayetano Alan, Senator Cayetano Pia, Senator De La Rosa, Senator Ejercito, Senator Estrada, Senator Gatchalian, Senator Go, Senator Ontiveros, Senator Lapid, Senator Legarda, Senator Marcos, Senator Padilla, Senator Pimentel, Senator Poe, Senator Revilla, Senator Tolentino, Senator Tulfo, Senator Villanueva, Senator Villar Cynthia, Senator Villar Mark, Senator Zubiri, the Senate President.
With 21 senators present, Chair declares the presence of a quorum. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, before we proceed with the business for the day, I'd like to acknowledge, Mr. President, several guests of our colleagues, Board Member Karen Palomar, guest of Senator J.V. Ejercito from the 2nd District of Capiz, guest of Senator Cynthia Villar, various youth and civil CSO organizations, Mangrove Matters Philippines, Matthew Tabilog, Jenea Cortez, Wetland International, Kisha Muanya, One Pawikan Initiative, Las Piñas, Parañaque Wetlands Youth, headed by Mark David de Guzman, Youth Strike for Climate, Kiana R. Amarnani, Young Baiteños for Environmental Advocacy, headed by Carlo J. Perez, Oceana Philippines International, headed by Attorney Gloria Ramos and Attorney Rose Osorio, May Chato, Youth for Blue Carbon, headed by Tracy Lay, Maulanin, and Yoko Diang. Guests of Senator Alan Peter Cayetano, Dr. Teresito Bacolcol, Dr. Valtin Samson from the OST. Guests of this representation, Alexander Corobin, Isabella Games, and Gary Ramirez. Mr. President.
To the aforementioned guests, welcome to your Senate, and the Chair would like to acknowledge as well the presence of our Secretary of National Defense, our former colleague from the House of Representatives. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reading. The third reading of bills. The printed copies of these bills were electronically distributed to members of this chamber on November 28, 2024 in compliance with the 3-day rule of the Constitution. With that, I move to consider on third reading Senate Bill number 2583. This is the bill on the Aklan Piña Museum and Cultural Center Act. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved. Secretary General is directed to comply.
An act establishing the Aklan Piña Museum and Cultural Center in the municipality of Calibo, province of Aklan. Its satellite centers, defining its purposes and appropriating funds therefore. Roll call vote. The Honorable Senator Binay, Senator Cayetano Alan, Senator Cayetano Pia, Senator De La Rosa, Senator Ejercito, Senator Estrada, Senator Gatchalian, Senator Go, Senator Ontiveros, Senator Lapid, Senator Legarda, Senator Marcos, Senator Padilla, Senator Pimentel, Senator Poe, Senator Revilla, Senator Tolentino, Senator Tulfo, Senator Villanueva, Senator Villar Cynthia, Senator Villar Mark, Senator Zubiri, the Senate President.
With 21 affirmative votes, 0 negative, 0 abstention, Senate Bill number 2583 is approved on third and final reading. Majority Floor Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move to consider on third reading House Bill number 10048. This is the bill granting Philippine citizenship to Mr. Alexander Corovin. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved. Secretary General is directed to comply.
An act granting Philippine citizenship to Alexander Sergeyevich Korovin. Roll call vote. The Honorable Senator Binay, Senator Cayetano Alan, Senator Cayetano Pia, Senator De La Rosa, Senator Ejercito, Senator Estrada, Senator Gatchalian, Senator Go, Senator Ontiveros, Senator Lapid, Senator Legarda, Senator Marcos, Senator Padilla, Senator Pimentel, Senator Poe, Senator Revilla, Senator Tolentino, Senator Tulfo, Senator Villanueva, Senator Villar Cynthia, Senator Villar Mark, Senator Zubiri, the Senate President.
With 21 affirmative votes, 0 negative, 0 abstention, House Bill number 10048 is approved on third and final reading. What is the
President.
pleasure of the Honorable Estrada, our Senate President Pro Tem?
Mr. President, I just would like to explain my vote, Mr. President.
The gentleman may proceed.
Yes, I voted yes on the citizenship of Mr. Alexander on the premise that he committed to help our future skaters here in the Philippines after he retires from figure skating. If not, I will have to vote no. But he committed to me personally that he will help our children, our future skaters in the Philippines, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President.
Duly noted and entered into the records. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, Senator Lauren Legarda would like to insert into the record her explanation of vote relative to Senate Bill number 2583, Mr. President.
Noted and so inserted into the records.
Mr. President, before we proceed to the other...
What is the pleasure of the Honorable Padilla?
Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo. Gusto ko lamang pong yung aking pong boto ay pumapayag naman po ako, pero gusto ko lamang pong
The
magbigay
gentleman
ng...
may proceed.
Opo, salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo, sapagkat minsan na po akong nagbigay ng mungkahi na sana sa susunod naman po ng may mga ganito, yun naman pong intelektual na mga dayuhan na nag-a-apply po sa atin. Kasi meron po akong isang pagkakataon na yung summa cum laude ng Harvard, matagal na pong nakatira dito at nakapag-asawa ng Pilipina at gusto pong maging Pilipino. Pero hindi po nagkaroon ng pagkakataon. Pero sana po, ang akin lang pong mungkahi, magkaroon po sana ng espasyo yung mga intelektual, hindi po laging sa sports. Yun lamang po, maraming salamat po.
Noted and entered into the records. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, I move for a minute suspension just to enable some of our colleagues to congratulate the new Filipino citizen. If the chair would allow? No? Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, before we proceed with the other order of business, I move that we dispense with the reading of the journals of the 31st session, Tuesday, November 26, 2024, and the 32nd session, Wednesday, November 27, and consider them as approved.
Any objection? Hearing none, reading of the journal is hereby dispensed with, and the same is considered as having been approved.
Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill number 2871 under Committee Report number 344. This is the bill on the Chemical Weapons Prohibition Act. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
The parliamentary status, Mr. President, is having closed the period of interpellation, and there being no committee amendment, I move to open the period of individual amendments and recognize the sponsor, Senator Jinggoy Estrada. And to propose individual amendments would be the minority leader.
Senator Estrada is recognized, the sponsor of the measure, and to propose amendments. Won't you propose amendments, Senator Estrada? Senator Estrada is recognized to propose amendments.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Sabihan mo. The gentleman may proceed.
Mr. President, these are our amendments to the Chemical Weapons Prohibition Act. On page 4, lines 8 to 9, delete the phrase "and any subsequent additions thereto" and replace it with "as attached and made an integral part hereof and any subsequent amendments thereto." So subsection G will now read as follows. Scheduled chemicals refer to chemicals listed in Schedules 1, 2, and 3 of the Annex on Chemicals to the Convention as attached and made an integral part hereof and any subsequent amendments thereto. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, amendment is approved.
Following the approval of and through the intervention of the good minority leader, Senator Coco Pimentel, I move that the full text of the Annex on Chemicals of the Chemical Weapons Convention containing the list of scheduled chemicals be attached to and form part of this bill.
Any objection? Hearing none, the aforementioned document is so attached as part of the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. On page 4, line 23, the words "national" and "authority" shall be in lowercase. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, amendment is approved.
On the same page, line 24, delete the acronym open closed parenthesis PNA-CWC. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, amendment is approved.
On page 4, line 24 and 25, delete the words "the PNA-CWC" and replace the same with "as such, comma, the ATC." Period. I so move, Mr.
Any
President.
objection? Hearing none, amendment is approved.
On page 4, line 30, delete the words "and implementing arm of the PNA-CWC." I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, amendment is approved.
On page 4, line 31, after the word "functions," delete the words "of the PNA-CWC," period. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
And on the same page and same line, delete the acronym PNA-CWC and replace the same with ATC. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Thereafter, all the acronyms PNA-CWC shall be replaced with ATC. I so move, Mr. President.
Just to clarify, wherever it may be found.
Yes,
Henceforth.
wherever it may be found, Mr. President. Thank
Any
you.
objection to the omnibus amendment? Hearing none, same is approved.
On the same page, line 31, before the word "shall," insert the phrase "acting as national authority." I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, amendment is approved.
On page 5, line 26, delete the phrase "shall have the authority to compel" and replace the same with "may require." I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, amendment is approved.
On page 7, line 2, insert after the word "code" the phrase "and a fine of not less than 2 million pesos nor more than 5 million pesos." I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection to the proposed amendment? Hearing none, amendment is approved.
If we're on page 8, Mr. President, may I be allowed to introduce some amendments?
The Honorable Villanueva is recognized.
Thank
You
you
may
very-
proceed, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, dear colleague, on page 8, line 17, after the word "to," remove the word "or," and on line 18, after the word "tolerates," insert the following words: or, comma, due to negligence, comma, fails to prevent. The sentence will now read as follows, Mr. President. The partner, president, director, manager, trustee, administrator, or officer of a partnership, corporation, association, or any other juridical entity who consents to, knowingly tolerates, or due to negligence, fails to prevent the commission of a violation of this act shall be held criminally liable. I submit to the wisdom of the sponsor.
What does the sponsor say?
Accepted, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Having been accepted, is there any objection? Hearing none, the proposed amendment is approved.
Thank you.
Mr. President, Senator Robin Hood Padilla is seeking the floor
Sir, pwede.
to propose some amendments as well. Mr. President.
The Honorable Padilla is recognized to propose amendments.
Ginoong Pangulo, meron lang po ako sanang gustong amendment sa page 9 kung tatanggapin po ng ating sponsor.
Mr. President.
Page 9, lines 2, Mr. President. I also have an amendment.
Mr. President, I'm still on page 8, Mr. President.
So page 8, we don't have
On
any-
page 8, the
Yes,
sponsor has an amendment?
yes, yes.
You
Mr.
may
President.
proceed, sir.
On page 8, line 20 to 21, delete the phrase, "The registration and license to operate of such partnership, corporation, association, or juridical entity," and replace the same with, "In addition to the payment of fine by the partnership, corporation, association, or juridical entity, their registration and license to operate." The paragraph shall now read, "In addition to the payment of fine by the partnership, corporation, association, or juridical entity, their registration and license to operate with the Securities and Exchange Commission or the SEC or the Department of Trade and Industry, DTI, as the case may be, shall be canceled and revoked permanently as ordered by the court without prejudice to imposition of sanctions pending trial." I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, the amendment is approved.
Thank you,
May-
Mr. President.
May I know what line Senator Padilla's proposed amendment on page 9 is?
15.
What line, sir?
Opo, Ginoong Pangulo, page 9, line 15 po.
Okay, in that case, Senator Villanueva is recognized
Thank you.
for an earlier amendment.
Thank you,
Senator
Mr.
Villanueva, you may
President.
proceed.
Thank you, dear colleagues. Mr. President, on page 9, between lines 2 and 3, this representation would like to propose a new paragraph that will be inserted, which shall read as follows. Persons who are found guilty of committing any offense punishable herein shall not be subject to probation under Presidential Decree number 968, otherwise known as the Probation Law of 1976, as amended by Republic Act number 10707. I so move, Mr. President.
What does the sponsor say?
Accepted, Mr. President.
Accepted. There being no objection, subject to style, the same is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, dear colleague.
The Honorable Padilla is recognized for an amendment on line 15 unless the distinguished sponsor has an anterior amendment. If there
No
is
amendment-
none,
No
the
amendment on page
the
9.
Honorable Padilla may proceed.
Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo. Pinunong Mayorya, maraming salamat din po at kagalang-galang na sponsor, panukalang batas, Senate Bill number 2871 sa ilalim po ng Committee Report number 344. Doon po sa page 9, line 15, insert a new section 9 to read as follows. Ito po ay binase sa amin noong pong nagkaroon po ng interpellation ang pinunong minorya tungkol po doon sa kung paano pag-iingatan yung mga seizures ng mga chemical weapons at lagi pong nababanggit yung Dangerous Drugs Act, yung pong RA 9165. Kaya po ito po ang aming inilagay po rito, binasi po namin doon on page line 15, insert a new section 9 to read as follows. Section 9, custody, destruction, and disposition of confiscated, seized chemical weapons. The immediate disposition of seized chemical weapons shall be given utmost priority. The Armed Forces of the Philippines, AFP, shall take charge and have custody of all chemical weapons confiscated, seized, and or surrendered in the following manner. The apprehending team having initial custody and control of the chemical weapons shall immediately after seizure and confiscation, physically conduct an inventory and photograph the same in the presence of the accused or their persons from whom such weapons are confiscated or seized. Ginoong Pangulo, pwede po humingi po ng 1 minute suspension?
The session is suspended. What does the sponsor say to the proposed amendment?
Mr. President, I think our colleague Senator Padilla hasn't is
Kindly continue, Senator Padilla. You may proceed, sir.
Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo. D, number 1, balik po ako doon. The apprehending team having initial custody and control of the chemical weapons shall immediately, after seizure and confiscation, physically conduct an inventory and photograph the same in the presence of the accused or their persons from whom such weapons are confiscated or seized, or his/her counsel, a representative of the Department of Justice, and any elected public official who shall be required to sign the copies of the inventory and be given a copy thereof. 2, within 24 hours upon confiscation, seizure, the said chemical weapons shall be submitted to an OPCW designated laboratory for confirmatory testing. 3, a certification of the OPCW designated laboratory results, which shall be done under oath by the laboratory examiner, shall be issued within 24 hours after receipt of the subject chemicals, provided that when the volume of the chemical weapons does not allow the completion of testing within the time frame, a partial laboratory examination report shall be provisionally issued, stating therein the quantities of chemical weapons still to be examined by the laboratory, provided, however, that the final certification shall be issued on the completed examination on the same within the next 24 hours. Number 4, after the filing of the criminal case, the court shall within 72 hours conduct an ocular inspection of the confiscated or seized chemical weapons, and through the armed forces of the Philippines shall within 24 hours thereafter proceed with the destruction of burning of the same in the presence of the accused or the persons from such items were confiscated or seized, or her counsel. The PNA-CWC, a representative of the media, the Department of Justice, and any elected public official. The head of the disposal team shall then issue a sworn certification as to the fact of disposal of the chemical weapons shall be submitted to the court having jurisdiction over the case. And number 6, the alleged offender or his/her counsel shall be allowed to personally observe all the above proceedings, and his/her presence shall not constitute an admission of guilt. In case the said offender accused refuses or fails to appoint a counsel within 72 hours before the disposition of the chemical weapons, the DOJ shall appoint
Member of the public affairs.
uh,
Members of the public affairs.
a member of the public attorney's office to represent the former.
Mr. President,
Renumber the succeeding sections accordingly.
Mr. President,
What does the sponsor say?
Hanggang dito.
I just would like to know the rationale of including the in his amendment number 4, including several media personalities, the procedure of confiscation when the chemical weapon might endanger the individuals present, Mr. President. Bakit po merong representative of the media? the DOJ, and any elected public official.
I think the proposal of Senator Padilla merely lifted what is written in the Dangerous Drugs Act. So what does Senator Padilla say? Pwede bang tanggalin yun?
Opo. Ang gusto lamang po natin dito, Ginoong Pangulo, ay maging malinaw po doon sa batas ng ating ginagalang at minamahal na sponsor kung paano po yung distraction and disposition. Katulad po ng sinabi ko po kanina, ito po ay binasi lang po namin doon po sa kung paano po ipinaliwanag ng ating pinunong minorya ang pagkakahambing doon po sa chemical weapons at sa droga. Pero siyempre po, malaya po ang ating sponsor na sila din po ay gumawa ng pagbabago dito. Katulad po kanina, binasa po natin, susunugin, burnin. Siguro po may mga chemical weapons na hindi naman pwedeng sunugin. So nasa kanila pong mercy, Ginoong Pangulo, kung paano po.
What does the sponsor say?
In our version, Mr. President, it is only the ATC and the OPCW representative, Mr. President. Maybe if I can convince our colleague, Senator Padilla, to delete.
Can that be done, Senator Padilla?
Kung ano po ang nais ng ating sponsor, kung ano po ang makapagpapalakas sa batas na ito, tatanggapin po natin, Ginoong Pangulo.
Subject to that condition, what does the sponsor say?
I accept, Mr. President.
With a caveat, distinguished sponsor, Section 9 is entitled Destruction, which already covers the proposal of the Honorable Padilla. So there might not be any need anymore to renumber it, but simply merge, subject to style, the provisions of Section 9 with the proposal of Senator Padilla.
Yes, Mr. President.
Any objection to Senate? What is the pleasure of the Honorable Zubiri?
Yes, just to add to the discussion, Your Honor, Mr. President,
Kindly proceed.
with the permission, of course, the two gentlemen, on the burning, there are certain chemicals, and just to add, kasi sinabi naman po natin kapatid na si Robin, that he will abide by what is the standard on the disposition of this. Kasi yung pagsusunog, Your Honor, for example, anthrax, they're biological warfare, biological weapons of mass destruction cannot be burned. Some of them have to go through thermal nuclear incineration. It has to be completely safe because these are air. Some of these are toxins in the air. So I agree though na dapat lagay natin ano bang gagawin natin dito sa disposition itong mga armaments na ito. But I think there are several, I believe, as the convention, Basel Convention was mentioned by the majority leader, there are several already protocols in place to handle the chemical and biological weapons on how to dispose of this. So maybe you can just place a broader line, Mr. President, to the sponsor on utilizing the best practices available to dispose this.
Yes, Mr. President. I think Senator Padilla has still an additional amendment with regards to what you have just manifested, Mr. President.
So let's act on this amendment first. Is there any objection to the proposed amendment as amended further by the distinguished sponsor? Hearing none. The amendment is approved, subject to style.
I think,
Ginoong Pangulo, meron pa po akong gustong
The
ihabol
gentleman may
dito.
proceed. On what page, sir?
Doon pa rin po, still on page 9, line 15, then section 9. Now, section 10 is hereby amended to read as follows. Section 10, destruction and disposition. The transportation, storage, destruction, and disposition of chemical weapons shall be conducted by the AFP under stringent security measures. The procedure for destruction and disposal of chemical weapons shall be established in coordination with the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, and its conduct shall be witnessed by the PNA-CWC to ensure safe and secure disposal in compliance with environmental and safety standards. A report on the destruction and disposal shall be submitted to PNA-CWC. The cost of destruction and disposal of any chemical weapons shall be borne by the erring person. In the destruction of chemical weapons, the highest priority shall be given to ensuring the safety of the people and the protection of the environment through methods that comply with national and international safety and emissions regulations, provided that the consent of the community to be used as destruction site of chemical weapons shall first be secured, provided further that to ensure the protection of the personnel charged with the destruction of chemical weapons, proper safety hazards shall be established together with the contingency plan in the event of exposure, and the provision for hazard pay shall be provided. Further, open pit burning, land burial, or dumping of chemical weapons in any body of water as a means of disposing the same ay hereby prohibited. Yun lamang po, Ginoong
What
Pangulo.
does the sponsor
Maraming
say?
salamat.
What is the pleasure of the Honorable Cayetano?
Mr. President, may we request for a copy so we can follow? It's quite long. So I'd like to be able to support the amendment, but I cannot follow because it's very long. Thank you.
Can we flash it on the screen, please?
Meron tayo?
Can we flash the proposed amendment? Only the paragraph of the proposed amendment.
Binibigay mo.
While we are waiting for it to be flashed on the screen, Chair would like to note for the Secretariat to also take note that any and all references to PNA-CWC read by the Honorable Padilla shall be deemed as already be simply referred to as ATC based on the previous amendment proposed and approved by the distinguished sponsor. Is it already on the screen?
I can.
Ginoong Pangulo.
The Honorable Padilla is recognized.
Opo, ako po ay handang tumanggap ng pagbabago po sa amendment kung meron pong gusto mga magdagdag na ating mga kasama.
While we are waiting for the input of Senator Cayetano, what does the sponsor say to the proposed amendment?
Maybe we can wait for the inputs of Senator Cayetano since she still has to review all the amendments proposed by Senator Padilla, Mr. President. While waiting, maybe I can continue.
Senator Cayetano is recognized. You may proceed, ma'am, for your interjection.
No, I'm not making an interjection yet. I just want to put on record, it's 5 pages. So you can proceed or we can suspend because I cannot read this in 1 minute. I need a few more minutes to digest this, Mr. President.
So can we proceed with the other amendments of Senator Estrada?
And also, the proponent was explaining to me that it was copied from something. I said, just put it on record because we're happy to know. I am happy to know if this is based on an existing law, an existing policy. And then I'd also like to have time to coordinate with the sponsor to hear what the resource persons have to say about it. It's just such a serious matter. And the former Senate President also had a comment, and this is the relevant provision that he was referring to. So I'd like all of these concerns to be put on record so we can study this carefully. But rest assured, I'm reading it now. I just know that I cannot give you my comment in 2 minutes. Thank you.
So with the permission of the Honorable Cayetano, the sponsor will proceed with this other amendment so that she can get a clean copy afterwards.
Yeah, so I will listen then, and my brain will focus on listening to the next amendment and not studying this. Otherwise, I will also ask to pause.
We will not yet approve this, Your Honor, until and unless the lady has given her inputs.
Thank
We
you.
will just proceed so that we can get a clean copy already of the amendments that the lady can review and propose suggestions to, if at all.
Thank you.
May we first act on the motion before the Honorable Padilla reacts? What does the sponsor say with respect to the proposed amendment of Senator Padilla without prejudice to further amendments being proposed by Senator Cayetano?
Accepted, Mr. President, but may the proposed amendment of Senator Padilla be included in the collapsed Section 9, Mr. President?
What does Honorable
Opo.
Padilla say?
Opo, Ginoong Pangulo.
Any objection to the proposed amendment having been accepted by the sponsor subject to that change? Chair hears none. Proposed amendment is approved.
Wala na ba ho kayo ibang amendment sa Senator Padilla?
Wala na po. Yun lamang po. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Honorable Padilla.
Ginoong Pangulo, gusto ko lamang pong idagdag, maiksi lang po, para po masagot ng konti yung binabanggit po ng ating senadora, Pia Cayetano ng Taguig Pateros. Tungkol lamang po doon sa batas kanina, inuulit ko po, ito po ay nanggaling sa iminungkahi po ng ating pinunong minorya nung sila po ay nagkaroon ng interpelasyon ng ating sponsor na lagi pong nababanggit yung patungkol po doon sa dangerous drugs law. At inaamin po natin na hindi po dapat talaga na pareho ang treatment dito sapagkat ito po ay chemical weapons. Ito po ay pinagbabasihan lang po natin kung paano po tayo naging mahigpit sa droga, dapat po tayong mas maging mahigpit dito po sa chemical weapons. Kaya po dun sa Section 10, doon po natin niliwanag kung paano po gagawin at kung sino po at ano po ang dapat na mga lugar at kung sino po yung mga taong dapat pumayag. Yun po lamang. Maraming salamat
The
po.
remarks of the gentleman are noted. The Honorable Estrada is once again recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. If I may continue on page 13. Ano ka? Line 5. After the word maintenance, insert the phrase antidote stock, comma.
Any
I so
objection
move,
to the,
Mr. President.
any objection to the proposed amendment? Hearing none. Amendment is approved.
May we recognize Senator Villanueva, Mr. President?
Senator Villanueva is recognized to propose amendments. You may proceed,
Mr.
sir.
President, dear colleague, Mr. President, I submit on page 13 between lines 24 and 25 to insert a new provision, section
19.
19, Mr. President, report to Congress not later than 1 year after the effectivity of this act. The ATC, acting as the national authority, shall periodically report to Congress, giving a detailed account of its accomplishment and progress, including on the cancellation of all licenses, an updated list of scheduled chemicals, and a copy of its annual declarations to the OPCW on relevant toxic chemicals and their precursors. We submit to the wisdom of the sponsor, and this was discussed during the interpellations, Mr. President, to ensure the proper monitoring and implementation of the law, which is in line of the oversight function of Congress. I submit.
Would the gentleman like to specify the term periodic? Do you want it quarterly, semi-annually, or annually instead of the generic word periodic?
I would leave it to the sponsor, Mr.
Annually.
President.
Annually.
Annually, Mr. President.
What does the sponsor say to the proposed amendment?
Accepted, Mr. President.
Subject to style.
Having been accepted, is there any objection? Proposed amendment is approved, subject to style.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, dear colleague.
Thank you, Senator Joel. Mr. President, I move that we suspend first the period of interpellation until Senator Pia. Period of amendments, Mr. President.
Any objection to the suspension of the period of amendments? Hearing none. Motion is approved. Majority Leader?
Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
Let's suspend first the bill.
Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 2871 under Committee Report number 344. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none. Motion is approved.
President, I move
Majority
that we
Leader.
proceed with the reference.
Secretary General is directed to comply.
Bills on first reading, Senate number 2884, an act further amending RA 7836, the Philippine Teachers Professionalization Act of 1994 as amended by RA 9293, Senator Revilla Jr.
To the Committee on Civil Service, Government Organization, and Professional Regulation.
Senate number 2885, strengthening the Philippine Civil Registration and Vital Statistics System, repealing for the purpose RA 3753 or the Law on Registry of Civil Status, providing funds therefore for other purposes, Senator Estrada.
To the Committees on Justice, Human Rights, and Finance.
2886, providing for the redevelopment of condominiums, amending for the purpose RA 4726, otherwise known as the Condominium Act, Senator Escudero.
To the Committees on Urban Planning, Housing, and Resettlement, and Ways and Means.
Resolutions, proposed Senate Resolution 1242, directing the appropriate Senate committee to conduct an inquiry on workplace harassment and abuse, Senator Tulfo.
To the Committee on Labor, Employment, and Human Resources Development.
1243, directing the appropriate Senate committee to conduct an inquiry on the foregone tax revenue as a result of smuggling and illicit trade of excisable products, Senator
To
Gatchalian.
the Committee on Ways and Means.
1244, expressing the profound sympathy and sincere condolences of the Senate on the demise of former Senator Santanina Nina Tila Rasul, Senator Escudero.
To the Committee on Rules.
1245, congratulating and commending the Philippine team under the Jiu-Jitsu Federation of the Philippines for the exceptional performance and medal haul in the 2024 Jiu-Jitsu International Federation World Championships held in Heraklion, Greece. Senator Cayetano.
To the Committee on Rules.
1246, expressing the profound sympathy and condolences of the Senate on the passing of the Honorable Santanina Tila Rasul, member of the Senate of the Philippines during the 8th and 9th Congresses, Senator Zubiri.
The Committee on Rules.
Committee reports. Committee Report 369, jointly by the Committees on Electoral Reforms and People's Participation in Finance, on Senate number 2883, with Senators Tolentino and Marcos as authors. An act allowing for electronic registration and voting by overseas Filipino seafarers, further amending RA 9189, the Overseas Absentee Voting Act of 2023, as amended by RA 10590. The Overseas Voting Act of 2013, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes. Recommending its approval in substitution Senate numbers 172, taking into consideration House number 10178, Senator Marcos.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
Committee Report 370 by the Committee on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs and proposed Senate Resolution 194 by Senator Ejercito. Resolution directing Senate Committee on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the alarming case of kidnapping, abduction, disappearances, and the recent spate of crimes in the country in general, with the end view of crafting legislation to strengthen our criminal laws and maintain peace and order in the country. And PS Resolution 195 by Senator Poe, urging the Senate Committee on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs and other appropriate committees to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the alleged rising abduction of cases in Metro Manila and Luzon. PS Resolution 207 by Senator Revilla, directing the Senate Committee on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs and other appropriate Senate committees to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the alleged increasing kidnapping incidents and recent spate of other criminal activities with the end in view of strengthening peace and order mechanism in the country, and the privileged speech of Senator Grace Poe delivered on December 14, 2022, recommending the adoption of the recommendations and their immediate implementation, sponsored Senator De La Rosa.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
Additional reference of business resolution, proposed Senate Resolution 1247, congratulating and commending the appointment of His Excellency Most Reverend Pablo Virgilio Xiongpo David, Bishop of the Diocese of Caloocan, as new Cardinal of the Catholic Church, Senator Ontiveros.
To the Committee on Rules.
Committee Report 421 by the Committee on Foreign Relations on proposed Senate Resolution 1248. Resolution concurring in the agreement between the Republic of the Philippines and Japan concerning the facilitation of reciprocal access and cooperation between the Armed Forces of the Philippines and the Self-Defense Forces of Japan, recommending its approval without amendment, sponsor Senator Marcos.
To the calendar for ordinary business. Majority Floor Leader.
President, I move that we transfer from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special orders, Committee Report number 421 on the proposed resolution, on proposed Senate Resolution number 1248. This is the resolution on the agreement between the Philippines and Japan concerning the Armed Forces of the Philippines and the Self-Defense Forces of Japan. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none. Motion is approved. Majority Leader.
President, I move that we consider proposed Senate Resolution number 1248 under Committee Report number 421.
Any objection? There being none, consideration of proposed Senate Resolution number 1248 is now in order. Secretary General is directed to read the title only of the resolution without prejudice to inserting into the records the whole text thereof.
Resolution concurring in the agreement between the Republic of the Philippines and Japan concerning the facilitation of reciprocal access and cooperation between the Armed Forces of the Philippines and the Self-Defense Forces of Japan.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, to sponsor the measure, I move to recognize Senator Amy Marcos, Chairperson of the Committee on Foreign Relations. So move, Mr. President.
Senator Amy Marcos is recognized to sponsor the resolution. You may proceed, ma'am.
Yes, Mr. President, many thanks, my distinguished colleagues in the Senate. Today, I submit to this August Chamber Committee Report number 421, sponsoring herewith Senate Resolution number 1248, entitled Resolution Concurring in the Agreement between the Republic of the Philippines and Japan concerning the facilitation of reciprocal access and cooperation between the Armed Forces of the Philippines and the Self-Defense Forces of Japan. Decades after the Second World War, my father, the late President Ferdinand Edralin Marcos Sr., by then an old and ailing veteran of the brutal Second World War, reflected. I was reminded, reviewing my life, that I have been in too many conflicts, too many wars, too many political battles, military battles, civil strife in government. And always one lesson stands out, and that is those whom you fight most passionately often turn out to be your best friends. Did he foresee today, when the fearsome Japanese Kempetai of 1942 are no longer, and in their stead are the Japanese self-defense forces offering us military aid and cooperation through this reciprocal agreement? Today, indeed, the Philippines and Japan enjoy a strong and vibrant relationship, sharing a reverence for democratic values and a common vision for a peaceful and prosperous future. While Japan has long been our foremost development and trade partner, it is only now that the deepening of defense and security ties for both countries tackles the complex security challenges of our region. In 2020, the Philippines ordered 3 fixed and 1 mobile long-range air surveillance radar from Japan for 5.5 billion pesos. Japan is also the supplier of many PCG, or Philippine Coast Guard ships, including patrol ships BRP Melchora Aquino and BRP Teresa Magbanwa, both of which were delivered to the Philippines in 2022. Earlier this year, the Philippines finalized its order for another 5 97-meter Coast Guard vessels from Japan, financed through the Japanese Official Development Assistance Loan, or ODA. Furthermore, it should be noted with pride that the Philippines is the first recipient of military aid under the new Official Security Assistance Program in Japan, when in November 2023, the Armed Forces of the Philippines received a $4 million grant from Japan to enhance the country's coastal security capabilities. This is on top of the advanced air surveillance radar system delivered to the Philippines in October of 2023 and the mobile radar system delivered in April of 2024, all part of the air surveillance purchased by the country from Japan for 5.5 billion in 2020. Let us note also that the mere 2 days ago, a second grant under 2024 of similar non-lethal equipment from the Official Security Assistance was again given by Japan to be released in March of next year. The Japanese surveillance radars are expected to significantly boost the Philippines' air domain awareness in the South China Sea and also provide the potential to create an ADA, or air defense, air domain awareness network extending approximately 3,000 nautical miles from the Japanese archipelago to the Philippines, if the two countries' systems can be linked in the future. This surely should dissuade any air power's projections and intentions in the Pacific. With more and more security equipment and vital defense assets being sourced from Japan, the next phase would be expedited by this proposed reciprocal agreement. In the close collaboration between the two countries is the regular holding of joint exercises to further enhance interoperability and foster capability building. Last July 2024, the Philippines and Japan signed the agreement between the Republic of the Philippines and Japan concerning the facilitation of reciprocal access and cooperation between the Armed Forces of the Philippines and the Self-Defense Forces of Japan, otherwise known as the RAA. This RAA aims to deepen defense cooperation between Philippines and Japan and enhance the interoperability between the armed forces of both sides, providing the legal framework for carrying out mutually determined cooperative activities. The RAA will facilitate the conduct of more in-depth practical military cooperation and exercises, joint training, disaster relief, and logistical support between the two countries. The agreement also outlines the privileges that will be accorded to the visiting force and their civilian component in the context of entry and departure, importation and exportation, consistent with domestic laws and regulations. In addition, the RIA contains provisions on access, movement, professional practice of the visiting force and their civilian component while in the receiving state. Learning from our previous country agreements, we have provided safeguards, and they are embedded in the RAA firmly and completely. Foremost, Article 3 of the RAA provides that it is the duty of the visiting force and civilian counterpart and the members thereof to respect the laws and regulations of the receiving state. It emphasizes as well that the visiting force and the civilian component must abstain from any political activity within the receiving state. Moreover, to eliminate any doubt and suspicion that the RAA may one day become a surreptitious basis for the permanent presence of foreign troops in the country, Section 3 of Article 8 of the RAA explicitly declares that the agreement shall not be construed as providing a basis for a party to establish its military facilities in the territory of the other party. To underscore the primacy of each country's command over its own personnel, Article 21 of RAA provides that members of the visiting force and the civilian component shall remain at all times under the national command and overall control of the sending state. Furthermore, to address concerns about possible cultural and environmental impacts of military exercises, Article 20 of the RAA outlines the guidelines for environmental protection, respect for cultural indigenous peoples' heritage, human health and safety, and the conduct of cooperative activities. This is the provision which was insisted upon by the Philippine side during negotiations and acceded to by the Japanese. When it comes to criminal jurisdiction over members of visiting force or its civilian component, the RAA makes it clear that the receiving state shall have the primary right to exercise jurisdiction over the members of the visiting force, including their civilian component, for offenses committed within the receiving state, except if such offenses pertain solely to the property or security of the sending state. The persons or property of the other members of the visiting force or its civilian component, or if such offense rose out of any act or omission in the performance of official duties. Indeed, the RAA is an important move in a long series of steps required for the Philippines to ultimately achieve a credible defense posture through capability building opportunities that will facilitate and enhanced interoperability that we should achieve with a trustworthy partner. The RAA will undoubtedly improve the standing, the morale, and the combat readiness of the AFP. All this without surrendering any portion of our sovereignty or becoming subservient to any foreign power. In the words of the Japanese Prime Minister Kishido Fumio, Japan and the Philippines are now experiencing an excellent relationship. We call it the golden age for Japan and the Philippines. Perhaps my father's prescient notion has indeed come to pass, that it is true that those we fought most valiantly are now our closest allies and friends. Hence, I now ask for the concurrence of this collegial body in the agreement between the Republic of the Philippines and Japan concerning the facilitation of the reciprocal access and cooperation between the armed forces of the Philippines and the self-defense forces of Japan. Thank you, Mr. President and honored colleagues.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, next to deliver a co-sponsorship speech is none other than Senator Joel Villanueva.
Senator Villanueva is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Floor Leader. Mr. President, dear colleagues, at the outset, please allow me to take this opportunity to express my sincerest gratitude and appreciation to the chairperson of the Committee on Foreign Relations, Senator Amy Marcos, for her hard work and her swift action on the Senate's concurrence to this important agreement. Mr. President, we also like to thank and acknowledge the presence of our Secretary of National Defense, Secretary Gibo Chodoro, who actually helped this representation and the Senate committee in understanding a lot of security concerns, Mr. President. The agreement, Mr. President, between the Republic of the Philippines and Japan concerning the facilitation of reciprocal access and cooperation between the armed forces of the Philippines and the self-defense forces of Japan demonstrates our common desire to further deepen the security and defense relationship between our two great countries. Mr. President, for 68 years since the establishment of our diplomatic relations, Japan has been a reliable ally in promoting regional and global peace and stability and forwarding an international order that is based on the rule of law. As we have relayed, Mr. President, to the Japanese Prime Minister Kishida Fumio during his visit in November 2023, and just recently to Ambassador Endo Kazuya, this representation puts on record our strong support for the ratification of the Reciprocal Access Agreement. Mr. President, this agreement will simplify the process of Japan's self-defense forces and the AFP to bring troops and equipment into each other's countries and make it easier to conduct joint drills. It will also allow our soldiers to undergo joint combat trainings with their counterparts from Japan, further enhancing our defense cooperation. Said agreement will empower and upskill our forces as they defend our country and preserve our territorial integrity. We are also expecting improved cooperation with Japan in other areas such as disaster relief, etc. The ratification of this agreement is timely as we are, admittedly, at a critical juncture in our young nation's history when our beloved country continues to be vulnerable to unlawful, coercive, and aggressive activities that threaten our territory and even the lives and livelihood of our people. Ultimately, Mr. President, this agreement and every agreement that we enter into puts the interests of the Filipino people front and center. Again, Mr. President, we convey our deepest gratitude to the Japanese government and the Japanese people for their sincere, reliable, and enduring friendship. Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo, at pagpalain tayong lahat ng ating Panginoong Diyos.
Thank you, Senator Joel, Majority Leader.
Mr. President, next to deliver a co-sponsorship speech is Senator Juan Miguel Zubiri. Move that
Senator
recognized.
Juan Miguel Subiri is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I stand here today to co-sponsor the agreement between the Philippines and Japan concerning the facilitation of a reciprocal access and cooperation between the armed forces of the Philippines and the self-defense forces of Japan, or the Reciprocal Access Agreement, or RAA, as we call it. As I said during the Committee on Foreign Affairs hearing chaired by Senator Amy Marcos just last Monday, I have long been pushing for the Philippine and Japanese governments to seal this RAA. First, in discussions with our good friend, former Japanese Ambassador Koshikawa Kazuhiko, way back in 2022. I raised the idea with President Marcos not long after, and then again in succeeding meetings with former Prime Minister Fumio Kishida himself during our official visits to Japan over the past 2 years. And I'm hoping that my staff can also upload the picture of our historic meeting with the good former Prime Minister. Last year, we even had the honor of inviting the former Prime Minister to deliver a historic joint session of Congress, and where he announced the commencement of formal negotiations on the RAA as part of our strategic cooperation in the areas of security and defense. Mr. President, we share a long history with Japan, a complicated one to be sure, but from this history, we have built a strong and enduring friendship. And today, we stand as key strategic partners with a shared interest in upholding peace and stability, freedom of navigation, and international law in the Asia-Pacific region. This makes us perfect candidates for military cooperation between the AFP and the Japan Self-Defense Forces, or the JSDF. And we stand to benefit greatly from this agreement in our efforts to improve and modernize our armed forces. In this globalized age, we cannot afford to be insular. We cannot grow by keeping to ourselves and refusing to expand our experience and our capabilities through engagement with other like-minded countries. In this spirit, Mr. President, I believe that we have to approach military cooperation with the same openness that we do with trade partnerships and cultural exchanges. Only with stricter terms of engagement in order to protect our people and our natural resources. To this end, the agreement lays down strong safeguards for the protection of our environment, cultural and indigenous peoples' heritage, and human health and safety. It also makes clear that we have criminal jurisdiction over members of the visiting force should they commit any criminal offenses within our territory. With these safeguards in place, we have the groundwork to build a healthy relationship between our countries in general and the AFP and the joint Japanese Self-Defense Forces in particular. With this RAA, we can look forward to heightened interoperability for military vessels and equipment that we acquired from Japan, and are still acquiring, as a matter of fact, as we speak, Mr. President. And we can strengthen our modernization and capacity building efforts through joint military exercises with them. But beyond this, my dear colleagues, I am particularly keen on taking advantage of this RAA to boost our country's disaster preparedness efforts. Like us, Japan is a famously disaster-prone country. But unlike us, they have developed a masterful whole-of-government approach to disaster mitigation, in which their self-defense forces play a huge role. And of course, the Japan Self-Defense Forces is unmatched when it comes to disaster preparedness, disaster management, and rescue operations, to the point where disaster response has become nearly as important a function for them as external defense and security. So we have a lot to learn from them in this regard. And if you can see, Mr. President, this picture that we had in Japan, where we were with Senator Pia Cayetano, Senator J.V. Ejercito, yours truly, of course, then Majority Floor Leader Joel Villanueva, Senator Sani Angara, Senator Amy Marcos, the sponsor of the measure, Senator Lito Lapid, Senator Mark Villar, Senator Grace Poe, and Senator Sherwin Gatchalian. Yes, Senator Binay ka pala. She's the one in the corner there. Natakpan ni Senator Joel. And of course, our ambassador, Ambassador Milen Garcia Albano. This RAA, my dear colleagues, is an instrumental document solidifying our strategic partnership with Japan and paving the way for even deeper bilateral cooperation in the future. Suffice to say, Mr. President, Japan is indeed our best friend in the region. If we have a best friend, it is Japan. When it comes to cultural exchanges, defense exchanges of material, as well as one of the biggest ODA, Overseas Development Assistance Funds, given to any country, Mr. President. Kaya mahal na mahal po natin sila dahil mahal na mahal po nila tayo. So, my dear colleagues, as such, I hope that we have the support of our colleagues in the approval of this agreement. Thank you very much. Mabuhay po ang samahan natin sa Japan, of course, and our country, the Republic of the Philippines. Mabuhay po.
Thank you, Senator Subiri, Majority Leader.
Mr. President, next to co-sponsor the measure is our Majority Leader, Senator Francis Teddy. I move that he be recognized.
Majority Leader, the Majority Leader is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, my full and unwavering support to this agreement goes back in the early stages of its negotiations. The Reciprocal Access Agreement between Japan and the Philippines is the first in Asia, and the realization of this representation's earlier proposal to conduct a multilateral show of maritime security cooperation with our allies and neighboring countries. The agreement under consideration, Mr. President, Japan-Philippines RAA, will facilitate the implementation of cooperative activities between the Philippines and Japan, such as joint exercises and disaster relief operations, and improve interoperability between the forces of the two countries. By establishing clear procedures and defining the legal status of both forces, we're not only strengthening our military capabilities, but also reinforcing our strategic partnership with Japan. The Philippines stands at a crucial juncture in the Indo-Pacific region. By sharing fundamental values and principles with our Japanese counterparts, we can promote peace and stability while also ensuring the safety of our maritime domain. As a staunch advocate of multilateralism, I believe this agreement extends beyond mere military cooperation. It likewise presents a unique opportunity to activate existing agreements with Japan, especially that would promote and foster growth and development among our fisher folks. Towards this end, this representation proposes during its implementation the inclusion of mechanisms that will facilitate the transfer of advanced fisheries technology from Japan to our local fishing communities. This collaboration can ensure the sustainable use of our maritime resources and enhance the livelihoods of our fishermen through international cooperation. Mr. President, ultimately, our primary objective remains the well-being, security, and safety of our people. This agreement is a crucial step toward achieving that goal, and I'm proud to lend my support to it. I look forward to our collective efforts in advancing this very important initiative for our nation. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Majority Leader.
Mr. President, the following would like to have their sponsorship speeches inserted into records. Senator Lauren Legarda, Senator J.B. Ejercito, Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, and Senator Nancy Binay.
Including this representation, Majority Leader.
Including Senator Jinggoy Estrada. Mr. President, Senator Pia Cayetano would like to issue a short manifestation. I move that she be recognized.
Senator Pia Cayetano is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'd like to join our colleagues in expressing support for this measure. This will have far-reaching effects on peace and security in the region and will contribute to the sustainable growth of our country. So I would like to be made a co-sponsor of this measure. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Pia. Majority Leader.
Yes, last to make a manifestation, Mr. President. Senator Robin Hood Padilla is seeking the floor, Mr. President. I move that he be heard.
Senator Padilla is recognized.
Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo. Nais ko lamang pong ipahayag ang aking suporta at nais ko pong maging co-sponsor dito. Nabanggit na po lahat ng ating mga mahal na senador yung patungkol po sa kahalagahan na ang sa maritime at ibang mga bagay pa. Gusto ko lamang pong ipaalala ang malalim na kasaysayan po natin, ang kultura natin na atin pong kasama ang bansang Hapon. Napakahalaga po sa kasaysayan ng Japan sa ating kasaysayan, mga mahal kong kababayan. Alam niyo po, ibang naratibo. Ito na po siguro yung pagkakataon na makarinig po tayo ng ibang naratibo. Kasi ang lagi nating naririnig, sila ay naging kaaway natin. Ano? Pero may isang naratibo. At ito po ay pinapatunayan ng kasaysayan. Kung titingnan po ninyo sa panahon ng Katipunan, ang unang sumuporta sa Katipunan ay ang mga Hapon. At yan po ay napapatunayan mismo doon sa barkong Congo na dumaong dito sa bayan natin. Katunayan nga po dyan, pati si General Artemio Ricarte, na kinikilalang unang Chief of Staff ng Armed Forces of the Philippines, ay matagal pong nag-self-exile sa Japan sapagkat hindi po siya nag-surrender sa mga Amerikano. No? At pati po yung naratibo na si Limahong, nung dumating dito at kinalaban yung mga Espanyol na sinasabi isang pirata, at dito rin po natin makikita ang mga kasama ni Limahong, mga Hapon, mga samurai, warrior, na lumaban sa mga Espanyol na mga sumakop po sa atin. Napakalalim po, pati po nung World War II, nakita naman natin na ang sumalubong sa mga Hapon ay si Emilio Aguinaldo. Dahil ang sinasabi nila, nung panahon daw po ni Dr. Jose Rizal, nung nagpunta si Jose Rizal sa Japan at humingi ng tulong at nagkaroon pa ng girlfriend doon, di ba, maraming naratibo po na nandiyan ang panahon, nandiyan ang Hapon. Kaya ito pong panukala nito, itong resolution nito, sinusuportahan ko po ito, hindi lang sa usapin ng tayo ay merong pag-uusap doon sa defense forces nila, kung hindi malapit po sa puso natin ang mga Hapon. Yun lamang po, maraming salamat.
Maraming salamat, Senator Padilla. Majority Leader.
Yes, Mr. President, Senator Tulfo would like to have his co-sponsorship speech be inserted in the records.
Noted.
And last but not the least, our Deputy Minority Leader, Senator Risa Ontiveros, would want to make a manifestation. I move that she be recognized.
Senator Risa Ontiveros recognized.
Salamat, Mr. President. I wish to manifest my support for this Reciprocal Access Agreement, RAA, which establishes procedures for the cooperative activities that are conducted by forces of Japan and the Philippines. In this geopolitical environment, I agree that we will gain abundantly through defense cooperation and military exercises. I am particularly grateful that the Philippine government insisted on the primacy of environmental protection and cultural integrity. Maraming salamat po to the men and women of the Department of Foreign Affairs and the Department of National Defense. And perhaps I cannot let this moment slip past without reaching back into history. Even as we rightly move forward with cooperation and collaboration, may we also find within us a collective desire to reckon with the past and to seek justice where justice remains elusive. I speak on behalf of the comfort women, like the Malaya Lolas, the invisible victims of the Second World War, whose voices are fast fading because of the ravages of time. I yearn for the day, Mr. President, that we also cooperate, Japan and the Philippines, towards righting those historical wrongs and healing the wounds of a contentious past. This, I believe, is also the badge of a true friendship. Salamat po, Mr. President, and to our Japanese allies, arigato gozaimasu.
Thank you, Senator Risa.
Yes, Mr. President, with that, I move that we suspend consideration of proposed Senate Resolution number 1248.
Before that, Senator Marcos. Are you seeking the floor? Anyway,
Maraming salamat lang po sa mga co-sponsor at sa kanilang pagtangkilik sa ating RAA sa Hapon.
Okay, I think Senator Pia Cayetano and this representation would like to be made co-sponsor of this bill. Thank you. Majority Leader.
Yes, I reiterate the previous motion, Mr. President. I move that we suspend consideration of proposed Senate Resolution number 1248.
Any objection? There being none, motion's approved.
Mr. President, I move that we transfer from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special orders, Committee Report number 298 on Senate Bill number 2787. This is the bill amending the Magna Carta for persons with disabilities. So moved, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, motion's approved.
I move that we consider Senate Bill number 2787 under Committee Report number 298.
Is there an objection? There being none, the motion is approved. Consideration of Senate Bill number 2787 is now in order. The Secretary will read only the title of the bill without prejudice to inserting into the record the whole text thereof.
An act further amending Republic Act number 7277 as amended, otherwise known as the Magna Carta for persons with disability, and appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move to recognize Senator Amy Marcos, Chairperson of the Committee on Social Justice, Welfare, and Rural Development, to deliver the sponsorship speech.
Senator Amy Marcos recognized.
Mahal na Pangulo, 10 ng aking mga kagalang-galang na kasamahan dito sa Senado. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Sa araw na ito, ika-3 ng Disyembre, pinagdiriwang sa buong mundo, taon-taon, ang International Day of Persons with Disabilities. Hence, today I submit to this Chamber Committee Report number 298, sponsoring here with Senate Bill 2787, entitled An Act Further Amending Republic Act 7277 as amended, otherwise known as the Magna Carta for Persons with Disability, and appropriating funds therefore and for other purpose. Ang pagkalinga sa ating mga PWD ay pamanang tungkulin sa akin ng aking ama Sa kanya ko unang nakita ang ehemplo kung papaano ang isang lingkod bayan ay magiging saklay at gabay ng ating mga kababayang may kapansanan. Kung papaanong maging tinig at mata para sa iba, lalo na sa mga panahong maraming nagbibingi-bingian at nagbubulag-bulagan sa pasakit ng kapwa. Dahil marahil sa kanyang habag at pasasalamat na naligtas siya sa sugat at kapansanan nung ikalawang gerang mundyal. Itinakda ng aking ama ang PD 1509 o yung pagpapatayo ng kauna-unahang National Commission Concerning Disabled Persons noong 1978. Noong 1979, nasundan naman to ng PD 1870 na dinedeklara ikatlong linggo ng kada Hulyo bilang National Disability Prevention and Rehabilitation Week. Matapos to, noong 1983, Batas Pambansa naman para sa mobility of disabled persons requiring buildings, institutions, establishments, and public utilities to install facilities and other devices. Finally, in 1987, our new Constitution declared in Sections 9, 10, and 11, Article 2, that the state shall guarantee the primacy of dignity and human rights and commit to promote social justice and the rising standard of living and adequate social service. Yet, still and again, with all these laws and those that followed them, the Constitution has been more honored in the breach than in the observance. Indeed, in December of 2006, the Philippines became a state party by signing the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, UNCRPD, requiring the protection and promotion of the rights of persons with disabilities, or PWDs, to an adequate standard of living and enjoy social protection without discrimination. Thus, the Philippines is, in fact, duty-bound to take the necessary measures to ensure that both the rights of the PWDs in the Philippines and their living standards should be met. Sadly, once again, the United Nations Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities produced an initial report in 2018 and roundly chided the Philippines for our failure to implement our obligations under the UNCRPD. It raised concerns over the lack of allowances and resources to cover disability-related expenses, as well as the limited provision of social protection programs for PWDs. The UN Committee further urged that the national government finally adopt measures to provide social protection schemes and allowances to recognize the additional costs and burdens associated with disability and ensure access to disability pensions by all PWDs throughout the country. Sa Pilipinas ngayon, itinatala na humigit kumulang 13 milyon ang may kapansanan ayon sa datos ng 2020 Philippine Statistics Authority. At malaking bahagi ng bilang na ito ay mula sa mahihirap na pamilya. Ngunit sa dinami-dami ng PWD dito sa atin, di pa halos natin sila nakikilala, ni nakikita o napapansin man lamang. In fact, the Commission on Human Rights stated that persons with disabilities experience difficulties in accessing education, healthcare, and income opportunities. Moreover, the situation of persons belonging to multiple marginalized, disadvantaged, and vulnerable sectors are exacerbated due to the lack of accessible government programs and services for persons with disabilities. As a result, they're more likely to experience economic hardships and inequality. Although the Magna Carta for Disabled Persons provides numerous benefits and privileges, these are mostly enjoyed by those who, to a certain extent, have the necessary purchasing power. Ang layunin po ng panukalang batas na ito ay palawakin ang mga benepisyong natatanggap ng mga taong may kapansanan. Many individuals with disabilities face challenges in securing stable employment, but their disabilities also entail availing of specific therapies, services, equipment that can be very, very costly. The proposed measure only suggests a very meager monthly stipend of 500 pesos to indigent persons with severe disabilities. Hence, if the DOH estimate is correct, and that therefore it is roughly a 1,919,000 or with severely challenged PWDs and those who are in the poverty or marginalized sector, that would be 593,911 persons. And multiplying that sum at 500 pesos per month, a mere 3.5 billion would be required. Surely a small sum when we compare it with the huge amounts already being discussed in GAA and NEP 2025. Kung kayang-kaya natin magtapon ng pera ng gobyerno sa bilyon-bilyon na nalulustay na flood control, nag-e-expire ng gamot, at mga nabubulok na pagkain sa iba't ibang bodega ng pamahalaan, pagkakaitan pa ba natin ang ating mga PWD na kababayan? The proposed measure also seeks to provide free assistive technology, services, and devices to allow them to overcome barriers to communication, mobility, and their daily tasks. It also requires that a lifetime validity of identification cards be issued to persons with permanent disabilities, thus putting an end to the rampant scam of fake or illegally produced disability cards from various LGUs. Also, this measure seeks exemption from passport processing fees, travel taxes, and other fees and charges levied by government for the PWDs to be exempted from the financial strain and difficulties these provide. Batid natin na malaking tulong para sa ating mga mahihirap na PWD ang 500 piso lamang. Buwanang stipend na naglalayong suportahan ang pang-araw-araw nilang gastusin at pag-anihin ang kanilang mga pinansyal na pasanin. Ngunit gaano man kaganda ang layunin ng panukalang batas na ito, magiging walang halaga kung walang karampatang pondo dahil walang paraan upang maisatupad ito. Kaya hinihingi ko ang suporta ninyo para maipasa ang panukalang batas na tulad ng ating mga social stipend at E-Centenarians Act ay pwede naman simulan sa maliit na halaga. Malaman lang ng ating may kapansanan na binibigyan sila ng sapat na pondo at pagkilala. Na ilayo natin sana sila sa diskriminasyon at bigyan ng pantay-pantay na pagkakataon para sa lahat. Kung ang PWD ay dadagdagan ng 2 letra E, enabled at empowered, ito ay magiging hindi lamang PWD, kundi pwede. 2 letrang E lang yan. At sa hindi na mabilang na pagkakataon, napatunayan na ng bulwagang ito na kaya nating gawing pwede ang sinasabi nilang imposible. Handa akong ibigay ang 2 letra E sa pangalan ko para ang PWD ay maging pwede. Hangad ko naman sa inyo ang 2 letrang O para ang panukalang ito ay maging totoo. Maraming salamat, Ginoong Pangulo at mga kasamahan sa Senado.
Thank you, Senator Marcos, Majority Leader.
Yes, Mr. President, next to deliver his sponsorship speech is Senator Ramon Bong Revilla. I move that he be recognized.
The gentleman from Cavite, Senator Bong Revilla, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today to join our very able sponsor, Senator Amy Marcos, in seeking this chamber's sweep approval of Senate Bill number 2787 under Committee Report number 298. This proposed measure is a step towards the achievement of our collective advocacy and the full realization of universal social justice. Social justice is not simply equal treatment. Rather, it demands that the vulnerable sector receives better. Hindi sapat ang patas na pagtingin, lalo na kung kailangan ng isang sektor na ng higit na atensyon tulong at kalinga. The persons with disabilities, PWD sector, is a segment of our society that must always be among the top priorities of the state. We should always have a bias towards promoting their welfare. Sadya namang may mga espesyal silang pangangailangan na dapat nating agarang mabigyang pansin, hindi lamang upang sila ay makatawid sa kanilang pang-araw-araw na buhay, kundi upang mas maramdaman nila na sila ay kabilang sa ating komunidad. Even at the risk of this bias, we have to ensure that we legislate equitable laws in order to nurture this sector so that they can unleash their fullest potentials. Tumitindig tayo ngayon upang bigyan ng mas malakas na tinig ang ating mga kababayang PWD. Ako mismo, Mr. President, bagamat pansamantala lamang, ay napagdaanan rin kahit paano ang hirap na dinadanas nila. Maski sa mga ordinaryong aktibidad lamang to, Mr. President. They say, you will never know the struggles and trials other persons goes through unless you walk in their shoes. Kamakailan nga tayo ay subukin ng tadhana, nabigyan tayo ng bahagyang silip sa mga pinagdadaanan nila. Saksi naman po kayo sa pagsubok na yon na hindi makalakad at hirap na makapasok sa plenaryo. It gave us not only a glimpse but a more profound understanding of their daily struggles. Napakahirap po talaga, Mr. President. Kung kaya naman, kalinga ang dapat alay natin sa kanila. Kaya naman ako ay kumakatok sa inyong konsiderasyon upang madali at mabilis na maipasa ang panukalang ito, Mr. President. Mr. President, we are seeking for is equity so we may achieve inclusivity. Let us give them more as they rightfully deserve more. Let us make this nation as inclusive as it can be, especially for our PWDs kababayans. Let us give those who have less in life more in law. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Revilla, Majority Leader.
Yes, Mr. President, next to co-sponsor the measures is Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosa. I move that he be recognized.
Senator De La Rosa is recognized.
Good afternoon, Mr. President and distinguished colleagues. I rise today to co-sponsor Senate Bill number 2787 under Committee Report number 298, which seeks to provide persons with disabilities additional benefits among others. So, Mr. President, hindi kaila sa mga nakakilala sa akin na ang puso ko ay malapit sa ating mga kababayang may kapansanan sapagkat ang aking bunsong kapatid at bayaw ay parehas na miyembro ng PWD community. Bagamat sila ay parehas na may kapansanan, ako ay naging saksi na hindi ito naging balakid sa kanila upang mamuhay ng normal sa kabila ng realidad na ang buhay ay hindi patas minsan para sa ilan. Just recently, our Filipino Paralympic athletes also recently competed in Paris to represent the country. As a sports enthusiast myself, I couldn't help but be in awe of every single one of them. Saludo ako sa bawat isa sa kanila sapagkat batid ko ang hirap ng isang atlitang lalong-lalo na para sa mga kababayan may kapansanan. Nonetheless, our Paralympic athletes prove to us that these disabilities are not hindrances in achieving excellence and bringing honor to our country. Mr. President, it is truly without a doubt that our PWDs are individuals we should look up to and gain inspiration from in living a meaningful and purposeful life. With this, I am very much honored to co-sponsor a measure which I know will fully integrate and promote PWD participation in the society. It is my fervent hope that through this measure, we will be one step closer in ensuring that the promotion of welfare of our PWD brothers and sisters is at all times prioritized. It is incumbent upon us to promote an inclusive and accessible life by limiting, if not totally removing, the barriers that prevent them from living a normal life. Robert Hensel once said, "There is no greater disability in society than the disability to see a person as more." I urge my colleagues to support this measure. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator De La Rosa, Majority Leader.
Yes, Mr. President, Senator Bongo and Senator Joel Villanueva would like their co-sponsorship speeches be inserted into the records.
Including this representation, Majority Leader.
Yes, Mr. President. And last, but not the least, to co-sponsor the measure is our Deputy Minority Leader, Senator Risa Ontiveros. I move that she be recognized.
Senator Risa Ontiveros recognized.
Salamat po, Mr. President. At magandang hapon po. Nais kong ipahayag ang aking suporta sa Senate Bill 2787 na magbibigay ng buwanang stipend para sa ating mga kababayang persons with disability. Hindi man kalakihan ang nakayanan nating ibigay sa ngayon, umaasa ako na sa mga darating na panahon ay madadagdagan pa natin ito upang makatulong pa sa kanilang pang-araw-araw na gastusin. This represents our collective commitment to equity and upholding their rights. For many, living with a disability brings challenges that extend beyond physical or mental health. The added strain of financial uncertainty can make these challenges even more daunting. This 500 peso stipend is designed to ease this burden, providing not just economic support, but also a sense of dignity and stability. It's crucial to recognize that people with disabilities are capable, resilient, and deserving of the same opportunities as anyone else. We must ensure that they are not held back by the barriers of financial hardship. By supporting this assistance, we affirm our dedication to inclusivity and equal access to the opportunities that enrich lives and build stronger communities. Let us continue to advocate for the sustainability and enhancement of this vital support. Together, we can ensure that everyone, regardless of our abilities, has the chance to thrive and contribute to our society. Mr. President, marami pong salamat.
Maraming salamat, Senator Risa, Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 2878.
Is there an objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move for a minute suspension.
Session suspended.
Resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill number 2878 under Committee Report number 346. This is the bill on the Economic Planning and Development Act. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, the resumption of consideration of Senate Bill number 2878 under Committee Report number 346 is now in order.
Having sponsored the measure, I move to open the period of interpellation and recognize the sponsor, Senator Juan Miguel Zubiri, and to interpellate Senator Aquilino Pimentel, our minority leader. I so move, Sir President.
Senator Subiri and the Minority Leader is hereby recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you very much, Majority Leader. Thank you.
Maybe if the sponsor wants to make an opening statement or no more?
No more na po. Well, a little bit lang, Mr. President, to my dear colleagues. Apparently, through our research, the NEDA, the National Economic Development Authority, was a creation of an executive order at the time. I think it was in 1987. Of course, at that time, most of the executive orders had the strength of a law during the transition government of then former President Corazon Aquino. And we still have not actually institutionalized it into a law. And the Constitution, Your Honor, was very clear under Article 12, Section 9. And if I may read this particular provision of the Constitution, Congress may establish an independent economic planning agency headed by the President, which shall, after consultation with appropriate public agencies, various public sectors, local government units, recommend to Congress the implementation of continuing integrated, coordinated programs and policies for national development. Until Congress provides otherwise, NEDA, National Economic Development Authority, shall function as the independent planning agency of government. So it was actually envisioned by the Constitution that we craft a law. And the reason for this, and some people have asked, Mr. President, why we need to do this. Number one, of course, we institutionalize it into law. The other is because of their expanded powers, Your Honor. Through the years, the last, how many? Since 1987, what's that, almost 40 years, 38 years, or 37 years rather, we have passed several laws that include NEDA in their law. In other words, they include NEDA as part of the function of the law. There you go, 133 RAs, Your Honor, 133 public acts and EOs where NEDA participates in interagency bodies. And so it's good that under this bill, we are actually institutionalizing all their mandates and functions because of this 133 Republic Acts, Your Honor, Mr. President.
Yes.
Thank you for those inputs from our sponsor, Mr. President. So with the permission of our sponsor, if you can just ask some clarificatory questions.
I would be honored, sir.
But is it correct that the NEDA, which is the acronym of the National Economic and Development Authority, is mentioned in the Constitution itself, Mr. President?
Under Section 9, Article 12.
Yes, oo nga.
Until Congress provides otherwise, the National Economic Development Authority shall function as independent planning agency of government.
So when our current Constitution was written, there was already a NEDA. And what was the legal basis for the existence of that NEDA mentioned in the Constitution?
It was the EO Executive Order 230, Your Honor. Issued by President Cory. I guess this was prior to the approval of the 1987 Constitution.
Yes, maybe we have can we have the date of the EO?
We'll just find out, Your Honor. July 22nd, 1987 po. So July 22nd, sir.
So July 22, 1987.
Yes, sir.
When did the Constitution become effective, Mr. President? I think that's February 1987.
February of 1987. I think at that time, Your Honor, wala pang Congress. I think Congress was not elected. They didn't elect Congress yet. So
no, my point is when the 1987 Constitution was being written or drafted, because it mentions NEDA.
Yes, sir.
So there might have been already a NEDA, not created by EO2.
Marcos time, Your Honor,
before. I'm asking for facts, Mr. President, because if EO230 was issued in July 1987, then when they were writing the Constitution, approved in February 1987, EO 230 was not the legal basis for NEDA.
So there is a PD, yung research ko po hanggang Cory lang, Tita Cory lang.
Sige,
So,
can we ask for a minute suspension, Mr.
the
President?
session suspended. Yes, Mr. President, my apologies to the minority leader. Upon further study, and I did ask this to my staff, and upon further study, our resource person showed a PD 107 creating the NEDA on the 24th of January 1973. That's the original.
Is NEDA with us? Is a representative from
Yes.
NEDA with us?
Rose
Okay.
CUSEC Rose is with us.
Yes, ma'am. Welcome, ma'am. I think NEDA would be proud to claim to have been founded on December 23, 1935. That is the result of our research. So, ibig sabihin nun, ano na po to, matandang ahensya na po ito with a rich history of economic planning, development planning.
Yes. Your research is better than ours, Your Honor. I salute the minority floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. But, Mr. President, so our measure wants to convert NEDA into a Department of Economy, Planning, and Development. Is that
That's correct.
Yes, the
Department of
objective.
Economy, Planning and Development. Although it's kind of confusing, Your Honor, because if you look at it, it's DEP-D, parang DEP-ED.
Yes.
So we may have to amend the
In the
later
name,
time.
the name.
The name.
Yes.
Baka para hindi ma-confuse sa DEP-ED.
Mr. President, we are but the objective of the measure is still to create a department, a new department, di ba?
That's
Ganun
correct,
pong
Your Honor.
lalabas
That's
na
correct, Your Honor.
for economic planning siya.
It's to convert into a department.
Yes, my problem, Mr. President, is we went back to our constitutional basis. Ang sabi ng ating constitution, and this just occurred to me right now, Mr. President.
Yes.
Section 9, the Congress may establish an independent economic and planning agency headed by the President, etc. And our claim is we are fleshing out this constitutional provision with this measure, Mr. President.
Well, it is one of those. Of course, we can decide to stay on as what it is now. But of course, we'd like to be able to comply with the constitutional request of establishing a NEDA and institutionalizing it through law, and also incorporating basically, Your Honor, because the EO 230, of which is being implemented here at the moment by NEDA, has very limited scope as compared to what they are doing now, Your Honor, Mr. President. They're doing a lot more functions now because of the 133 laws that we passed, which included NEDA, everything from CLUP to planning and organizing LGUs to planning and organizing the PDP. It's not the PDP Laban, Your Honor. It's the Philippine Development Plan. So,
And anyway, that party has been hijacked, Mr. President. So,
you're the original and I believe still the president of the party.
Mr. President, my point is, if we are converting NEDA, the present NEDA, into a department, so that will now be headed by a secretary, who under our constitutional concepts would be the alter ego of the president. Will that department still be that independent planning agency mentioned in the Constitution?
Well, the agency, Your Honor, is still headed by a secretary. As a matter of fact, he goes through the Commission on Appointments like any of the other departments. But he will still be under, of course, the supervision of the President, Your Honor, kasi the NEDA board is headed by the President. They're only the secretariat of the NEDA board, Your Honor. To be, yeah. Yeah. But I guess if your point is that will it be shielded by political considerations? I think that's part of the mandate that they're supposed to have impartial. No, they should be impartial when it comes to the development of different areas of the country. Particularly, Your Honor, if these are local development plans, and therefore the DEPD shall be independent in the sense that as part of its mandate of Section 4 of the bill, the department shall generate and provide impartial, objective, and evidence-based analysis and recommendations to national and local government agencies. The DEPD shall continue to collaborate with different national and local government agencies and other stakeholders to ensure the effective and efficient delivery of services and alignment of policies and programs and projects with long-term development vision, framework, and plans. And so, technically, Your Honor, they should be impartial and independent. Especially when you talk about development in the different regions, without favoring any particular region or political aggregation.
So, Mr. President, NEDA, the current NEDA, is functioning as the independent planning agency of the government by virtue of the second paragraph of Section 9 of Article 12 of our Constitution. So, whether it is independent or not, we cannot help but allow NEDA to function as that planning agency of the government.
Yes, sir.
Now, Congress is now trying to flesh out maybe the directive or maybe the suggestion of Section 9, Article 12, Paragraph 1, that we can establish an economic and planning agency. But the adjective is there. It must be an independent economic and planning agency. So if we are patterning it after the departments, we know that departments are not independent of the president because their head is even the qualified political agency theory, is even the alter ego of the president.
Alter ego.
So there's direct control. Actually, control yan eh. I mean, the president can even replace his judgment for the judgment of the department secretary, Mr. President. So that's I raise a constitutional issue here. Yung NEDA, even the present NEDA, even if we say na, well, it's still totally controlled by the president. Wala tayong magawa ron because the second paragraph says NEDA, which existed before this constitution, continues to be this planning agency of the government, and it is described as independent. So
Yes.
it is the constitution which gave us the description of NEDA.
Yes.
But
I understand where you're going.
But
Yes.
if Congress wants to create an agency, economic planning agency, it must be independent. So, does His Honor believe that our bill is compliant with this directive from the in the Constitution that economic and planning agency, although headed by the president, must be independent?
Yeah, it's a bit confusing. Actually, some points, as we both know, many years have passed. We've tried to amend the Constitution, one point or the other, because of ambiguous language, because it is quite confusing, because in the first paragraph, Congress may establish an independent economic and planning agency headed by the president.
Correct.
So,
Yes.
I think that alone is a bit confusing, because I understand what you're going through. It's like the COA or COMELEC, where really they are independent bodies appointed by the president, and you cannot touch them until they're either impeached or they are, that's only impeached or they pass away. You know? In this case, they don't have the same type of power that COMELEC and COA, as well as the Civil Service Commission, have in terms of independence. So, yes. So I'm in a quandary as well, Mr. President, because it says here it's to establish an independent economic planning agency, but it is headed by the president.
Siguro, if the sponsor can help us understand how the current NEDA functions, Mr. President, baka dyan natin mahanap yung susi into coming up with an agency which is which is independent, but at the same time headed by the president, but not, ang meaning kasi ng headed, it doesn't mean directed by the president eh. it's headed by the president. I mean, as chairman, he can convene a collegial body, etc. But the decisions the decisions of the collegial body cannot be replaced by the president.
No, we have, Your Honor, this is very interesting. I just got a phone-in answer from some friends, and legal luminaries, and they said the deliberation, when they researched it, the deliberation of the CONCON says that NEDA is independent from Congress, but under the executive, not the intention to make it a constitutional body. Apparently,
Yes,
it was
yes,
a deliberation of the CONCON.
It is a statutory body because sabi dito Congress may establish, so it's by law, established by law, not a constitutional body. Not in the sense of a constitutional commission, but what is the significance of that word independent, Mr. President?
Yes.
Doon lang tayo mag-focus po.
I believe when they say independent, Your Honor, because the function of the NEDA now, if you notice, Mr. President, like for example, discussions on RDC, di ba, yung Regional Development Council, the NEDA is the host, if I'm not mistaken, right? Is the host agency, is the secretariat of the RDC. When they say independent po siya, it's not supposed to be dictated by the politicians or dictated by or influenced by any other influence groups or stakeholders, so that they can come up with a plan of action for a particular region without fear or favor. What is the best, that they can, of course, plan for that particular region. So that's my understanding of their independence. Not necessarily independent from the executive, because you're right, appointments to the undersecretaries, even today, undersecretaries' ASECs are appointed by the president. Even the secretary is the alter ego of the president, which still needs CA approval and confirmation. At any time, the president can remove the secretary of NEDA. But as an independent, the word independence would be more like a non-partisan,
Correct.
more non-partisan
I
in
agree
nature.
with you.
Yeah, non-partisan. And in fairness, Your Honor, Mr. President, I'm sure the minority leader knows, among government agencies that are quite non-partisan, for example, the agency that I sponsored during the budget was the DOST. They're quite non-partisan because they're mostly scientists. And also NEDA, they're like economic scientists. If you talk to them, they're more economic scientists than they are political personalities. So I guess in that way, for example, the PSA po is under them, the Philippine Statistics Authority. So regardless of outcome, they will show the numbers and they will be true to the numbers.
Problem, Mr. President, the DOST has no specific constitutional entry like this. So maybe we can still do this, but is it the department concept which we should implement, Mr. President? Because as we all know, if you're a department, then the department secretary is the alter ego of the president. Direct control, his decisions are replaceable with the decisions of the president. So, yun lang po yung basic tanong ko po. I'm sure we can do this kasi directive nga ng Constitution yun. Congress may establish, but is the route that we have chosen the correct way to achieve this, given that there is this description of the planning agency to be independent, although at the same time headed by the president.
Yes.
So yun po yun.
At the proper time, we can review the provisions of this particular bill to strengthen the independence.
Yes,
especially for interference of politicians, possibly.
Can it be done Mr. President, yung tanong ko, can that be done? Can you strengthen an independence, lagyan natin sa quotation marks yung word independence, through the department concept? Because we know that that's really not independent of the president, the normal department concept. So unless we say that this is a special department, and then what sections prove to us that this is a department in a class by itself, Mr. President?
Yes. Well, I think that's the idea that the Constitution is trying to pursue, that it's sort of a special agency or special government agency that is independent. It's just not clear independent from the president, or independent from local government interference, or independent from other government agencies? Because I believe...
Mr. President, I'll just,
Yes, sir, please.
I think it should be independent from politics.
Correct.
Precisely. So independent from politicians.
Correct.
So it's still headed by a politician, but it's independent. The president is a politician, but it's independent of the politician. But that politician heading it has one vote, definitely, and chairs the meeting and has one vote. But the final decision must be made by
The members of the...
personalities who are independent
board
of not politicians or independent from politics.
That's correct, sir.
So have we
Kasi-
achieved this ideal in the measure that we are discussing, Mr. President?
I'd just like to talk about maybe precedents, and I think NEDA is the go-to agency when we're discussing, for example, inflation, Your Honor. No matter how the president would like to sugarcoat inflation, NEDA has to tell him, I'm sorry, Mr. President, but inflation went up. How many percentage points? That's independent. They look at numbers and, of course, data, facts and data. GDP growth. No matter how much, I'm sure the president would say, taas natin, hindi po nila magagawa yan. There's a formula, there is, of course, data that is required, and they have to report the actual data. I guess that's the independence, Your Honor, na binabanggit dito sa Constitution and their mandate. They have to be independent that way. Even in projects, Your Honor, remember, sir, that, Mr. President, that any project, I believe now that's over 2 billion pesos, 2.5 billion pesos, has to go to NEDA approval, especially if it entails ODA funding or loans from government, other governments. If you're making COICA or JICA, that has to go through NEDA approval. A lot, and I've noticed this in the past, a lot of congressmen, even senators, governors have lobbied with NEDA on particular projects, but NEDA has to stand pat on the priorities. So kung hindi po siya priority and ang laki ng pondo na kailangan dun, they will thumbs down the project, and it's happened many times. I guess that's the independence that they're trying to pursue here, that they will not be coyed or threatened, or they will not allow themselves to be threatened by political pressure on other fronts, of course. And eventually, you're absolutely correct. There's a NEDA board, and this is about, right now, there's 15 members of the NEDA board. They all decide, no, as a board, this particular project is sound, doable. Will it help the GDP growth rate of the country? Will it help with bringing down inflation? Things like that, Ron.
So it's a 15-person board headed by the president. Sa ngayon?
As chairperson, Your Honor.
Chair, yes. How does NEDA currently function? They really vote with the chairman, the president of the republic as chairman, having only one vote. His vote is counted as one.
We have meetings and yes, one local, Mr. President.
Yes, according to our USEC, they have meetings periodically and to decide these flagship projects, and of course discussions on the planning and Philippine Development Plan. Is there voting? Rarely now they vote. It's a consensus po. I'm just getting.
Yes, I know. Pero kung na-convince naman, that's it. That's a decision. Pero let's say if it's really a contentious issue and they are forced to vote, the president of the republic's vote is just one vote.
That's correct, Your Honor. In principle,
yes. That's the mechanism, Mr. President.
You're absolutely correct, sir. In principle, yes.
Sige po. And then, pero is NEDA, the current NEDA, is it now the one coming up with integrated and coordinated programs and policies for national development? Ginagawa na ba yan ang current NEDA?
To the extent that they can, though, Your Honor.
Kaya ano kaya yun? What does that mean?
We do the studies.
They do the studies. They do the policy recommendations and the planning for all that. So as to the extent that they can. But they do all the studies. All the studies come from them. Even the long-term and medium-term, short-term, medium-term, and long-term planning that comes from them. They're the go-to agency, Your Honor, for all of that with government. So
Short-term, medium-term, and long-term planning. But what aspects of our lives, our nation's life is being planned by NEDA, Mr. President?
well, even Your Honor, and I'm still just getting the answer from my resource persons, but even DBCC, whenever we do the budget, DBCC, it's headed by NEDA. They head the NEDA. DBM. But NEDA is part of the DBCC. So it discusses everything from government expenditure, where the money is going, and how it will impact on the economy. That's NEDA's participation. Those are parts and parcel or examples of what NEDA function is.
Here are the different plans that we have done.
As to planning, Your Honor.
And also as to planning,
What
marami pala ito po.
aspect of our nation's life is being planned by NEDA?
I'll give an example, Your Honor. In 2023, major sectoral plans of NEDA. This is only for 2023, Your Honor. The Philippine Action Plan for Nutrition, 2023 to 2028. It was done and approved on 2023, July 7. And we can provide you all these plans.
Marami po ba?
Marami po.
Marami po.
And I'll name maybe 5 of these so
Sige
that you
po,
can.
opo.
Philippine Program Against Child Labor Action Plan, the National Objectives for Health, the Philippine Population Development Plan of Action, Labor and Employment Plan, the National Environmental Health Action Plan, Social Protection Plan, Philippine Youth Development Plan, the National Security Policy as well, National Defense Strategy, Philippine National Police Medium-Term Development Plan, to name many, Your Honor.
What was the last one, Your Honor?
The National Defense Strategy Plan.
Defense.
Apo. And the Philippine Crime Prevention Plan. Philippine National Police Commission Crime Prevention Plan.
So were those composed and drafted by NEDA, or NEDA just compiled and printed or published the plan from the specific government agency with the specific mandate about the subject matter? Kasi if I notice it correctly, Mr. President, yung mga topics nun, yung nutrition, may Nutrition Council tayo.
Yes.
Youth, meron tayong National Youth Commission, etc. So,
Apparently, Your Honor, Mr. President, I was told by my resource persons that it is a collaboration with all the other agencies like DOH and all the other agencies for the nutrition plan, DOST, DOH. So some of them, I think, for example, it says here the second Bangsamoro Development Plan under the Bangsamoro Transition Authority. So I think under the creation of our BOL that you spearheaded, they were able to come up with a development plan for that. So some are mandates of law that they have to.
so will the department, just in case if this bill becomes law, will the department continue what the current NEDA is doing as far as those plans are concerned, Mr. President?
Yes, it's the ensuring. Yes, they will continue.
So parang ano rin siya,
ensuring alignment now of the different.
parang coordinating body din siya.
Yes, actually, coordinating body naman talaga NEDA, Your Honor. To be very honest, they lead the planning, but they're just how to explain this. In the actual setup now, as being told by me earlier, NEDA pala is really NEDA board is the boss, and they're the secretariat. So the NEDA board, when they meet regularly about the direction that the president wants for Bagong Pilipinas or whatever program that they have, NEDA is the secretariat that implements the action plan. So if we create the department, it will just strengthen and institutionalize all these plan of action. Because some of their mandates, Your Honor, to be honest, and I reviewed the EO 32, 230. The EO 230, napaka-ikli ng kanilang mandate as compared to what they're doing now, provided by different mandates of different Republic Acts. So they just want to, instead of amending EO 230, they just want to hopefully institutionalize it by law. And I guarantee, Your Honor, or dear distinguished colleague, this will have no extra cost to government. The only extra cost is they're only requesting for 2 more undersecretaries, because right now they only have 3 undersecretaries and 5 ASECs. Under the other departments, they have 5 undersecretaries. So I think and some other staffing, pero the total cost to government is only 116 million per annum additional cost to
Additional.
government.
And then we noticed that there is a council being I think
Yes po,
we
that's
are
the ED
creating
Council.
a new council, the
ED,
Economic Development Committee.
Yes,
Wala,
Economic
committee, sorry,
Development
it's a committee.
Council.
Council or committee?
Council po. Because right now it's the NEDA board, they're going to rename it to the ED Council. Economic Development. Economy Development or Economic Development? Yeah, parang ED Council.
So the the current NEDA board's function will now be played and discharged by the Economic Development Council.
They're saying it's Economy Development Council. So
Economy-
Economy Development Council, Your Honor.
Economy.
Why don't they just call it Economic Development?
Separate from
Sa bill.
the ECOM, which is the Economic Development Committee.
Okay, so they're saying Economy Development Council, but
Economy
I like
Development
listening
Council.
to the Economic Development Council. But
Sige po. Opo. So parang in effect, we will not lose the current NEDA because the current NEDA, as we know it becomes the Economy Development Council.
yes,
And
sir.
then over and above it, there is now a department structure.
The Secretariat, yes, sir.
What's the relationship of the EDC, the council, with the department?
Yes, what is the relationship between them and what's the relationship?
The departments will take over the NEDA secretariat function. So the ED Council, the department will be the secretariat of the
Yes. So it's the same setup. It's basically the same setup, Your Honor. Nothing changes. So the NEDA, well, it will be DEPD, will become now the Secretariat of the ED Council. So it's the
So
same.
mali ang na-envision ko. Akala ko nasa loob, napapaloob yung EDC ng department, hindi pala.
Hindi
So meron tayong department and above it is the EDC.
Yes, yes, sir. That's like the board. When you have a corporate board,
Okay.
that's the corporate board.
So why did we call it the department, Mr. President? maybe that is what the source of all my misrepresentations, confusion, Mr. President. So, Mr. President, I move that I be allowed to suspend my interpellation and but to make good use of our time, Senator Risa Ontiveros would want to start her interpellation, Mr. President. So with the permission of our sponsor, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Honor, to the Minority Floor Leader, Mr. President. Thank you very much. Yeah, we'll just get more information for you, Your Honor. So when we discuss again next week, we can be on point. Thank you, sir.
Mr. President, next to interpolate is our Deputy Minority Leader. Senator Risa
Deputy
Ontiveros.
Minority Leader is recognized.
Salamat po, Mr. President, at magandang hapon po,
Good afternoon,
good sponsor. And to the NEDA family, of course. So, Mr. President, good sponsor, gaya ng sinabi ko sa good sponsor, 3 paksa lang, 7 tanong lamang for this afternoon. So, una po, tungkol sa NEDA or the DepDev or whatever we finally will call it, yung committees po nila vis-a-vis the current cabinet clusters.
Yes, sir.
So, it's
Yes, ma'am.
it's been the practice of the 3 administrations, including this one, to form cabinet clusters, even while there are already NEDA committees and subcommittees. So unang tanong po, pwede bang sabihin na yung mga cabinet clusters na yon magiging redundant at best? Kasi ang DepDev, meron na siyang structures, hindi lang sa pagpaplano, pero pati sa pagsisigurado na yung mga budgets, sinasalamin yung plano, at yung implementation methods ay makakamit yung mga layunin na nakalagay doon sa planning matrices ng NEDA, Mr. President.
I'll just consult with my.
Yes, good sponsor.
The question is redundant.
In the
Did you print that? We're printing. Can I borrow your computer?
We distinguish between. Are you sure?
Yes, Your Honor. For instance, the question is if there's a redundancy of cabinet clusters. Yes, according to my resource person, for instance, the bill proposes the abolition of the EDG in light of the establishment of an EDCOM, an Economic Development Committee, and under the NEDA board. So the committee under the NEDA board will likewise focus on policy issues, while the clusters are primarily concerned on resolving day-to-day implementation issues that require interagency collaboration.
So pero pwede po nating sabihin, Mr. President, good sponsor, na all the current NEDA o magiging DepDev na committees and subcommittees will actually substitute na for the current cabinet clusters. Tama po ba yun?
Ideally, Your Honor, ideally, that is what is supposed to happen.
Right. Salamat, good sponsor. After all, at the direction of the Executive Secretary, it surely makes sense for 2 or 3 secretaries to come together after a cabinet meeting so that they can develop a plan for executing the President's various directives. Pero, so kaya, ayun, actually nasagot nyo na po, good sponsor, yung follow-up question ko dun sa sagot nyo kanina na, kasi tatanong ko sana, so hindi ba pwedeng sa NEDA committees at subcommittees na i-formalize ang mga ito sa halip nga sa mga cabinet clusters. So
Yes,
ganun
ma'am.
actually yung magma-materialize na scenario, good
Yes,
sponsor.
that's correct, Mr. President. It can be done that way.
Salamat, good sponsor. Okay, dako na po ako sa pangalawang paksa ko, the link between planning and budgeting. So, and this is explicitly mentioned in the DepDev bill. But when we say that the Philippine Development Plan is linked to the budget, ano pong indicators ang nasa isip natin bago natin masabi na yung annual o multi-year budget ay tapat talaga sa Philippine Development Plan? Good sponsor.
Yung plan call answer. Tsaka yung monitoring, evaluation.
So they'll have a planning call, no?
Yes, sir. Which is the budget priorities which comes from?
Okay, so they'll have what they call a planning call. And during the planning call from the budget development framework, priorities framework that comes from NEDA. So doon po manggagaling yan.
Alright, salamat, good sponsor. At yung similar dun sa isang exchange between the good sponsor and the minority leader kanina, yung planning call ba magiging annual lamang siya o mas madalas? Ganong kadalas, good sponsor?
Every 3 months though, they actually, I'm sorry, every 3 years, sorry.
Okay.
Every 3 years, 3 years, not 6 months.
Every
3
3 years.
Kanilang
Okay.
planning call.
So, sa isang term ng isang administrasyon, 2 beses lamang.
Opo.
Every 3 years. All right.
But
Muntik na,
maybe in the proper time, if you want to put it in the law, they meet sooner.
perhaps
Why
good
not?
sponsor. Yes, I will think about that and then present a possible amendment, proposed amendment for the consideration of the good sponsor. May excite sana ko na, wow, quarterly. Pero pag inisip natin,
3 years pala.
napakaraming trabaho naman several times a year. At kung iisipin natin yung budget call nga sa ngayon,
Opo.
taunan, mahirap namang isipin na quarterly. Pero kung taunan nga yung budget call and then ang ating planning call ay every 3 years, parang medyo hindi synchronized. So yes, good sponsor, salamat.
The proper
I will
time,
think
Your
about,
Honor,
opo,
you
at the
could-
proper time.
To improve the bill.
Thank you, thank you. So, dito sa planning call, and in fact, good sponsor, I have to confess, itong idea ng planning call, isa sa pinakagusto ko sa bill sa ngayon, no? Isa sa pinakagusto kong ideya, mekanismo. So, bukod sa ngayon, every 3 years, ang planning call para siguruhin na yung annual or ewan ko kung magko-conceptualize sila ng 3-year budget, it's another exciting thing to think about, ay tapat ba talaga sa PDP? Ano yung mga indicators na gusto nilang i-generate through this planning call para sabing, okay, itong plan will actually flesh out and enable the implementation of the whole PDP, good sponsor.
You have indicators per chapter. According to my resource persons, Your Honor, they have indicators per chapter of the PDP.
Okay.
So, I don't know, maybe that's specific per chapter? The indicators, it's specific. What I could do, Your Honor, in a later time, I can get the indicators for you and on which chapters of the PDP.
Maraming salamat, good sponsor. I would appreciate that. All right. Now, in some countries, yan, planning and budgeting are just one department. So, on a scale of 1 to 10, good sponsor, paano ina-assess ng NEDA Secretary yung lakas nung link sa pagitan ng national at regional planning, kasama yung budget na pinopropose ng presidente?
On a scale of
Sponsor.
Scale of 1 to 10. Scale of 1 to 10.
Nagtitinginan yung mga taga-NEDA. 6 or 7, Your Honor.
Aba.
If I can get the question right,
Yes.
it's the RDCs, for example, the RDC budget.
Oh, not just the RDC's good sponsor, but the strength of the link between national and regional planning on the one hand with the budget that comes to be proposed by the president.
6 or 7, the reason being is because not always what they submit to the national is actually budgeted and funded.
Right.
There's usually, in the RDCs, I notice, Your Honor, my dear colleagues and Mr. President, is that they ask for the sun, moon, and the stars, di ba? Malaki yun. But what actually is funded eventually in the DBM is, medyo mas konti ang nailalabas. Mabuti na siguro kung 20% nun ay pinapondohan yung mga regions.
Kung gayon, good sponsor, kung 20% lang nung sinasubmit ng NEDA ang actual na lumalabas sa...
Akin lang po yan, Mama. Akin lang po yan, Mr. President. I'm not sure, but they might get higher. But on my mind, it might be not us. I don't think they can actually get what they're really asking for. There's a wish list, hindi siguro lahat ay natutupad.
Opo, I would agree, good sponsor. And in fact, yung sinabi ng good sponsor na 6 or 7, it's even a bit higher nung sasabihin nung iba. And maybe the good sponsor is just doing his job to putting the best foot forward about this bill and the agency for which we are deliberating it. Sabi nung iba, 5 siguro. At kung 20% lang talaga ang nag-appear, posibleng mas mababa pa. So, kumbaga, there's room for improvement that we want to achieve para mapalakas yung link na yun between planning at both national and regional levels at yung actual budget na lumalabas. And mamaya, matatanong ko sa inyo yon, good sponsor, yung huling paksa ko, which is also something the good sponsor and the minority leader began to discuss earlier about the role of the RTCs sa lahat ng ito. So pero huling mga tanong lamang dito sa pangalawang paksa, anong mga bagong proseso o linkages sa pagitan ng DBM at DepDev ang ini-introduce ng bill, good sponsor? For example, ito, mandatory po ba or at least practice po ba para na yung DBM secretary aasa sa latest assessment ng NEDA kaugnay ng pinaka-importanteng PDP plan slippages, lalo na yung may kinalaman sa slippages na nangyayari dahil sa inadequacy ng past budget allocations at disbursements, good sponsor?
Yes, that's absolutely correct. Malaking hakbang ang binibigay po na advice or decisions ang DEP or NEDA Secretary sa DBM. For example, katulad ng binanggit mo, they prioritize no particular infrastructure developments that will be able to jumpstart the economy. I think one of them, for example, is the Cavite-Bataan link, interlink, as well as the bridge, as well as the Negros Iloilo bridge na dadaan po sa atin sa Negros and Panay Island. These are inputs given by the NEDA or the DEPD, for example, to the DBM na sana mabudgetan. As a matter of fact, marami nga dito dahil sa kaltas-kaltas ay nawala ng pondo sa ating national budget, which we restored through efforts like, for example, Senator J.V. Ejercito and yourself, Your Honor, with health measures, and with J.V. Ejercito, which is the flagship projects on transportation. As a matter of fact, NEDA also was one of those who vehemently pushed for the privatization, no, the leasing out of airports. Kasi di ba, nakakaroon tayo ng delays. Sa sheer frustration po siguro nila, I'm just guessing, no, the sheer frustration of the Department of Transportation, they decided to also push for its privatization so that private companies may be able to run it better. So tama po, may link po ang DBM and the DEPD on this particular issue on how to come up with a long-term development plan and framework that will help our economy and our people as a whole.
Thank you, good sponsor. So, bukod dun sa regular advice na binibigay ng NEDA sa DBM, tinatanggap ng DBM sa NEDA, what new processes or linkages between the two departments does the bill introduce, good sponsor?
They will also likewise, the DPD will also likewise conduct and oversee evaluation of the impacts and outcomes of the priority programs and projects. So hindi lamang yung consultation on what should be spent, but they also have a long-term evaluation on the impacts of these priority projects to ensure the results of the evaluation will inform development plans and programs in a timely manner. So, ang gusto po ng DPD and the DBM is to work together to ensure that the national budget is responsive. It's responsive to the nation's needs, to our people's needs. So yan ang napakahalaga.
Salamat, good sponsor. And napakahalaga talaga, pati itong specific point na binanggit nyo na i-oversee yung impacts in the long term ng mga priority projects. So, will that include most important Philippine Development Plan slippages? Will that be among the important, hindi lang advice, but feedback given by NEDA or the new department to DBM?
Yes,
sponsor?
Your Honor, that's correct, Your Honor. Slippages, when you say slippages, it could be the non-implementation of major programs that affect, for example, GDP and inflation. So NEDA always steps in to remind these agencies, particular DBM. I recall, nung nag-underspending yung gobyerno sa national infrastructure projects and programs, NEDA reminded, for example, the DBM, that they should release these funds because, of course, if you have these large infrastructure projects all over the country, yung mga magagandang infrastructure projects, hindi po yung mga flood control, kung ano-anong kalokohan yung ginagawa. Yung mga large infrastructure projects, it of course equates it to more jobs, and they notice a rise in the GDP growth in particular areas where these projects are implemented. So they monitor that. Talagang binabantayan ng NEDA yan. And the DPD will be doing the same, Your Honor.
Thank you, good sponsor. Isa pang halimbawa ng posibleng new process or linkage. For example, when proposed shovel-ready projects coming from the NEDA's public investment program, say on, sorry to mention, good sponsor, nabanggit nyo nga, flood and irrigation management. Mas okay pa yung irrigation management. Kapag ito po are either removed from the General Appropriations Bill and replaced with projects on the same sites that do not align with the PIP, yung bill po ba natin, ino-authorize yung NEDA na jointly sa DBM magrekomenda ng veto o conditional implementation ng inserted projects? Kasi sa ngayon, tama po ba, good sponsor, DBM at hindi DBCC ni ang NEDA ang nagre-rekomenda ng budget veto messages?
You're absolutely correct, Your Honor. Because as my experience nung ako po yung naging Senate President, may mga complaints yung ibang departments na yung pondo ay ginagastos ng hindi tama. At NEDA po ang nagtulak kay Presidente. Hindi ko na babanggitin ko ano, alam na po natin yon, na kung saan, for example, yung flood control namin po sa Cagayan de Oro, and I'm very proud of this, Senator Pimentel is also from Cagayan de Oro, his roots is from Cagayan de Oro. When we had Sendong, and I mentioned this Typhoon Sendong, we lost about 1,400 people. So JICA came in through the recommendation of NEDA and developed the flood control program for Cagayan de Oro. In-implement po namin yan at napakaganda po na yun. Wala nang nakatira doon sa loob ng isla ng mga river systems. We build dikes that have highways. We no longer have this type of floods in Cagayan de Oro and Iligan City. So that's proper planning. Hindi po patsi-patsi na nangyayari kasi kanya-kanyang pira-piraso, no? Na yan ang nangyayari. To whose benefit, I do not know. And that is where NEDA steps in. So I recall on my second term as Senate President, there was a meeting between Balisacan, Secretary Balisacan together with Secretary Bunoan, recommending to the President to stop all these small little patch-up projects because it's a
Hyperlocal.
waste of money, and the President was able to correct that. Yes,
Mr. President, the Majority Leader would like to interject.
Yes, Mr. President, I be recognized.
The majority leader is recognized.
Yes, I'd just like to ask, with the permission of Senator Tiberos, our sponsor.
Yes, Mr. President.
How can the reorganization of the NEDA into a full-fledged department improve, for example, or for our 30-year comprehensive master plan for infrastructure development?
Actually, Your Honor, NEDA is where it all starts from. Kasi may RDC po yan eh. I know they have RDC, Regional Development Councils, all the way up to the highly urbanized cities, may mga representative po sila. And it is these people on the ground that tell NEDA, we need this to be pushed in the upper echelons of government. So talaga napakahalaga ang role ng NEDA. And being a department, they're now co-equal. Kasi to be honest, Your Honor, parang second-class citizens ang dating nila. Kasi they're only a agency. Parang nga, NCMF lang dati. Office of Muslim Affairs lang OMA. Then we elevated it to the NCMF Commission to give them a bit more authority. So we're doing about the same. And hopefully with the support of my colleagues, we can even further strengthen this mandate.
Hopefully, with a full-fledged department, Your Honor, Mr. President, that yung pong dilemma natin, no? Yung mga projects that are, yun nga, yung patsi-patsi, pira-pira. So, we really need to, there are some infrastructure projects, especially the big-ticket items that need 20, 30, even 50 years of planning. We're hoping that NEDA, when it becomes a full-fledged department, can make sure that these programs will be continuous even if there's a change of administration. Kasi administrations natin are just 6 years, so medium term. But our big ticket items need a long-term planning. So will NEDA becoming a full-fledged department be able to make sure that these big ticket items will have continuous, will be continuous, no? It would transcend different presidencies.
Yes, that's correct, Your Honor. They will have that mandate. Part of their mandate under the law will be that for the long-term Philippine Development Plan, Your Honor. So tama po yan. Whoever administration comes in, it should be implemented and continued. Tama po yan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Leader. Thank you, good sponsor. I have to say na itong sinabi ng good sponsor na magkakaroon nga ng jointly with DBM ng recommendatory power sa veto or conditional implementation ng mga inserted projects na hindi naman aligned sa public investment program is in addition dun sa kaninang pinag-usapan natin good sponsor na planning call. It's one of my favorite parts of this bill. Tingin ko isang importanteng kapangyarihang maibibigay ito sa NEDA or sa future department. And at the proper time, I would like to work with the sponsor.
I will accept, Your Honor. I know what you're speaking. I will accept. Yes.
This is dangerous, good sponsor, if we're beginning to eat each other's minds on this bill. And I would gladly.
That they can
Salamat
recommend
po.
veto on certain particular
Opo.
wasteful
Opo.
projects. Absolutely, Your Honor.
Opo.
Why not?
So thank you so much. I look forward to that, developing a number of proposals to strengthen that collaboration between DepDev and DBM to develop more ways of strengthening the link between plans and budgets. So salamat, good sponsor. So huling paksa ko na lamang po for this evening, good sponsor, Mr. President, inducing LGUs to also support longer-term plans of the RDCs. So with the Mandanas-Garcia ruling having conveyed additional resources to the LGUs, and with the very limited fiscal resources of the central government, it will be useful to find synergies and collaborations between local governments and national government agencies. So, paano natin ito ginagawa sa ngayon, good sponsor? Anong ginagawa ng NEDA para makuha yung suporta ng mga local governments na mag-invest para sa mga outcomes na nandoon sa PDP? Pero kahit hindi necessarily suportado na ng LGUs. For example, when national roads that have already been constructed by the national government need maintenance, nakukuha ba natin yung tulong ng mga probinsya, mga syudad para mag-allocate ng maintenance budget sa mga plano nila? Good sponsor.
Well, on the planning side, kasi ma'am, they don't have the mandate, Mr. President, to actually instruct local government units at this point in time. But they're proposing, under our bill, DEPD will be empowered to conduct capacity building and technical assistance initiatives, which may be the venue to cascade the long-term development vision and framework of the regional and LGU, local government unit planners. So, I guess yung sa kalsada, infrastructure development, papasok under this department, they can now go down to the LGUs and help them plan. Because there are, let's face it, Your Honor, Mr. President, there's a lot of LGUs that have no master plan or the lack of having a master plan. It's actually NEDA now that is really capacitating them to do such a thing, including their CLUPs, yung, comprehensive land use programs and plans. And so with this department, it will be part of their mandate. Hindi po, wala po sa mandato nila po ito na yon under EO 230. But they're doing it now. As an additional, additional service to the additional cost. They're saying additional cost to the NEDA. So they want to institutionalize it na po, ma'am. Maybe in the proper time, you can even strengthen it and put the help me with the amendments to make it even aligned to your idea of not just projects but also programs, social programs and all them.
Salamat, good sponsor. Siguro kung NEDA ang nag-in-charge sa capacity building ng mga LGUs, pati sa mga transition development plans ng mga LGUs, pagkatapos ng Mandanas-Garcia ruling, maybe hindi nabitin po yung TDPs na iyon at mas marami po ang nakakagawa na. So, and at least kung hindi man magkaroon ng mandate to instruct, by doing that capacity building with the LGUs, ma-encourage nila to support outcomes na gusto natin, investment, or rather outcome-directed investments as suggested in the PDP, or even kung paano mag-allocate ng budget para ma-realize yung outcomes na gusto sa PDP. And of course, good sponsor, narinig ko rin ito pinag-uusapan ninyo ni Minority Leader kanina. Of course, LGUs have their autonomy and the local officials have their electoral constituency. So, DepDev could have a regional LGU process for alignment, but of course, it will not always be easy for DepDev to persuade local officials and district representatives to align with national and regional plans. Local plans and budget priorities will frequently tend to be short-term and, yun na nga po, hyper-local. So, ano pong mga halimbawa ng carrots and sticks ang pwedeng i-roll out ng DepDev given yung mandate niya sa bill na ito? Good sponsor.
Respect to the budget. Kasi pwedeng mag-counterpart bigyan ng parang leverage.
That's correct. The Undersecretary gave a good point. With respect to the budget po, again, the carrot and stick there is, of course, kung hindi po sila sumasang-ayon sa regional development plan, it's most likely that they will not be, their request will not be forwarded to the DBM or the national government for funding. So the carrot and stick there is, it has to be in line with the government's thrust for bringing down inflation, bringing down poverty rates. I guess yung SDG being able to comply with our sustainable development goals, commitments of the United Nations on health, on nutrition. So, yun ma'am, ang parang sinasabi nilang pwede nilang idiin.
Salamat, good sponsor. At baka pandagdag na carrot, pwede pa pag-isipan ng NEDA o future department kung ano pang regional LGU processes for alignment
Yes.
pwede nilang i-disenyo at saka i-implement. So just last questions, good sponsor sa paksang ito. A bit of data lang. Ilan pong RDC endorsed projects ang nasa pipeline na at kasama na sa naisama noong 2025 NEP, good sponsor?
Naku, nagkandara pa sila. Madam. So, may I ask for a minute suspension
Or
na.
if the good sponsor
We can
prefers,
submit,
it
maybe?
be submitted later
Yeah.
na lang po.
They don't have
Kasama
the
dun
data right
sa,
now.
opo, kasama sa yung mga indicators per chapter
Yes.
ng PDP.
Yes,
All
we'll do
right,
that.
salamat good sponsor. That would be
We'll
okay.
send it right away.
Salamat po. And I recall a discussion with NEDA during budget deliberations a few years ago. They mentioned then that their goal was to increase the percentage of total RDC endorsed projects to 75%. Ito pa rin po ba ang perspective ng NEDA, good sponsor?
Yes. I'm getting the affirmative, Your Honor.
Okay, good to know po. And huling tanong po for this evening, having more NEDA RDC approved projects ensures that projects are properly vetted and budgeted. NEDA approved projects can be an avenue even for shared projects with LGUs. Sa tingin po ba ng good sponsor at nung NEDA, may posibilidad ng ganon sa current bill, good sponsor?
Yes. Yes.
Technical assistance and feasibility study.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely, ma'am. On the production of, or the feasibility studies, of course, on the studies that will come out. Yes, ma'am. We're saying absolutely. The capacity building programs that they'll have with the LGUs. Absolutely, ma'am.
Salamat, good sponsor. So finally, at the proper time, I would like to work with a good sponsor on specifically mandating the DepDev to cause the authorization of region-specific national, local cost-sharing rules in regions where it will be important for regional-aligned agencies to harness the support of LGUs in achieving PDP catch-up plan. So, tagang salamat to the
Thank
good
you very much.
sponsor at
I'm
sa
looking
NEDA
forward,
family.
Mr. President,
Yes,
looking forward
likewise.
to the proposed amendments of the good lady senator.
Salamat po. Maraming salamat, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. May we ask for a minute suspension, Mr. President? I think there's one of the lights
Lights.
are.
Mr. President, I move to suspend the consideration of Senate Bill number 2878. So moved, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move that we consider proposed Senate Resolution number 1245. This is the resolution congratulating and commending the Philippine team under the Jiu-Jitsu Federation of the Philippines. So moved, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? Hearing none, consideration of proposed Senate Resolution 1245 is now in order. The Secretary is directed to read the title of the resolution.
Resolution congratulating and commending the Philippine team under the Jiu-Jitsu Federation of the Philippines for their exceptional performance and medal haul in the 2024 Jiu-Jitsu International Federation World Championships in Heraklion, Greece.
Mr. President, to sponsor the measure, I move to recognize Senator Pia Cayetano. So moved, Mr. President.
Senator Pia Cayetano is recognized.
Sorry.
Parang Arnis lang, madaming medal. Mr. President, I rise to sponsor Senate Resolution number 1245, congratulating and commending the Philippine team under the Jiu-Jitsu Federation of the Philippines for their exceptional performance and medal haul in the 2024 Jiu-Jitsu International Federation World Championships in Heraklion, Greece. Present with us today are members from the Jiu-Jitsu Federation of the Philippines, including their dedicated coaching staff, as well as their proud parents. Welcome to your Senate. The Jiu-Jitsu Federation of the Philippines is the national sports association for Jiu-Jitsu, established in 2015 with the purpose of leading the development of the sport in the country. The 2024 Jiu-Jitsu International Federation World Championship was held in Heraklion, Greece from 23rd to 28th of October for the adult division and the 29th of October to November 3 for the youth division. one of the most prestigious international competitions in the world of martial arts, brought together over 780 elite martial artists from 58 nations who competed in various categories of the sport. Our national athletes proudly represented the Philippines in the World Championships and achieved a remarkable feat by winning a total of 20 medals across different weight and age categories. 8 won by the youth team and 12 won by the adult team. 4 gold medals, 2 silvers, and 14 bronze medals. Some of the medalists are here with us today. You can stand up if when I call your name. Zeus Babanto, Chase Mapalo, Ivan Chang, Elise Malilay, Caleb Balanzat, Ruen Salvadora, Santiago Luzuriaga, Bella Salamilas, Mara Sarinas, Earth Change, or Change, sorry. Change. Elisha Malilay, Sachi Konghun, Jin Ong, Vito Luzuriaga, and Iman Baluyo. And then from the adult team, Jolene Ko, Annie Ramirez, Romeo Arellano, and Joanna Tan. Our national athletes' exceptional achievement at the World Championships stand as a testament to their hard work and discipline. This representation has continuously advocated for the need to strengthen the country's grassroots sports development program in order to support our young athletes and help them hone their skills with the end goal of becoming not just elite and professional athletes, but persons that the youth can look up to. We also extend our gratitude to the team's coaches for the invaluable contribution and unwavering support for the athletes. Special thanks to Stephen Camphalos, head coach, and Christopher Gallego and Meggie Ochoa. I also want to share that during my conversation with them earlier, they were telling me how Jiu-Jitsu is now part of the Batang Pinoy, right? And they were proudly participated in by players, or do you call each other players or athletes from all over the country. So that is really how we want to see the sport grow, with representatives from all over the country. This victory serves as an inspiration to the Filipino people and underscores the Philippines' growing recognition on the global stage of martial art. It highlights the tremendous potential of our athletes and paves the way for the rise of our world-class Filipino martial artists. Once again, congratulations to our national athletes and the entire team for their outstanding achievement. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Pia. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, next to co-sponsor the measure is Senator Joel Villanueva. I move that he be recognized.
Senator Joel Villanueva is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, esteemed colleagues. This representation is so honored and delighted to co-sponsor Senate Resolution number 1245, congratulating and commending the Philippine team for their outstanding performance and impressive medal haul in the 2024 Jiu-Jitsu International Federation World Championships recently held in Heraklion, Greece. Ginoong Pangulo, ang JJIF World Championships ay isa po sa mga itinuturing na pinaka-prestisyosong paligsahan sa mundo ng martial arts. Para po sa taong ito, nagtipon-tipon ang halos 800 na pinakamagagaling na martial artists mula sa 58 na bansa, at hindi po nagpahuli ang ating mga pambato na nagpamalas ng kanilang husay at talento. Our national team, ably represented by the Jiu-Jitsu Federation of the Philippines, took home a total of 20 medals, 4 golds, 2 silvers, and 14 bronzes in the youth and adult categories, making their mark in the global stage of martial arts. They showed the world not only their talent and skill, but also their perseverance, discipline, and heart of the Filipino athlete. To our promising martial artists, maraming salamat. Thank you very much for raising our flag in the Jiu-Jitsu World Championships. Ipinakita po ninyo na kahit sa anong larangan, kayang-kayang makipagsabayan ng mga Pilipino. Sigurado po tayo na ang panalo ninyong ito ay magsisilbing inspirasyon sa mga batang atletang nagnanais magsanay at makilala sa larangan ng Jiu-Jitsu at iba pang martial arts. Muli, congratulations, mabuhay po kayong lahat. Maraming salamat, Ginoong Pangulo, at pagpalain tayong lahat ng ating Panginoong Diyos.
Maraming salamat, Senator Villanueva. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, no member wish to interpret or propose amendments to the measure. I move that we adopt proposed Senate Resolution number 1245, subject to style. So moved, Mr. President.
Excuse me.
Mr. President, before I reiterate my motion, Senator Bongo would like to his co-sponsorship speech be inserted to the record.
Including this representation, Majority Leader.
Yes, Mr. President. Again, Mr. President, I reiterate my motion again to adopt proposed Senate Resolution number 1245, subject to style. So moved, Mr.
Is
President.
there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move that all present members of the Senate be made co-authors of the resolution.
Noted.
A minute suspension, Mr. President. Next na.
Session is
Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we consider proposed Senate Resolution number 1244, taking into consideration proposed Senate Resolution 1246. This is the resolution expressing the profound sympathy of the Senate of the Philippines on the death of former Senator Santanila Tila Razul.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, consideration of the aforementioned resolution is now in order.
Mr. President, I move that we recognize Your Honor as being the principal sponsor to sponsor your proposed measures, Senate Resolution number 1244.
Prior to the sponsorship of this representation, may I ask the Secretary General to kindly read the title of the resolution into the records.
Resolution expressing the profound sympathy and sincere condolences of the Senate on the demise of former Senator Santanina Nina Tila Razul.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Today, we join the nation in mourning the passing, celebrating the life, and reaffirming the legacy of the grand old dame of Mindanao, Senator Santanina Nina Tila Razul. Senator Razul's story of enduring through conflict while fighting for peace, rising to power while remaining deeply grounded, and serving the people within and outside government is truly worth remembering and emulating. Moreover, it must be preserved from the murky passage of time and etched in the minds of the TikTok generation who may not recall her name, much less the landmark laws which bear it. Ironically, some of the causes which the youth now champion are the very ones which Senator Razul first lent her lone voice as our first and only female and Muslim senator of her time. Long before the Me Too gave a megaphone to women's issues, Senator Razul fought for the fairer sex to get their fair share, allocating seats in local councils, unlocking the doors in the military, and earmarking funds for their advocacies. And if the hashtags had existed then, she would have made BLM or Bangsamoro Lives Matter her rallying cry as she sought to sway those who saw Mindanao as a distant curiosity and pigeonholed Muslims in their unfair stereotypes. Senator Razul's conviction came not from pointers generated by staffers using ChatGPT, but from her own lived experience. Like the pristine sea surrounding her hometown of Siasi Sulu, the original island girl, so to speak, saw with full clarity Mindanao's untapped potential and its greatest barrier, rampant illiteracy, exacerbated by decades of neglect and conflict. She faced these challenges not with downcast eyes, but with long-reaching vision and purposeful action, first as a public school teacher and later as the founder of the Magbasa Kita Foundation. She later served as barrio councilor and provincial board member in Sulu, during which the first Moro insurgency unfolded and the atrocious burning of Holo occurred, razing her own hometown to the ground and leaving it in ruins. This ground zero was the kilometer zero of her long journey in public service. This journey brought her to the halls of the 1987 Senate, a body tasked to rebuild institutions, reinstate integrity, and restore trust and faith in government. She contributed greatly to the edifice of laws under whose canopy all men and women can pray, live, work, and love as they wish. It now falls upon us to continue the wars which Senator Rasul waged, wars against ignorance and illiteracy, and for integrity and for inclusion. We have one distinct advantage, our diversity. Where Senator Rasul was once a singular voice, today's Senate has the greatest number of members from the fairer sex and the farthest island group. Like Senator Rasul, whose unique upbringing, perspective, and principles contributed greatly to the Senate's mission of uplifting the Filipino people, so too is our diversity and common purpose, our collective strength. To Senator Rasul and her beloved family, and to all those whose causes were once her concern, we pledge to continue her legacy. To borrow the words from a great American senator whom she once quoted in one of her speeches on the Senate floor, quote, "Her work goes on, her cause endures, her hopes still live, and her dreams shall never die." Maraming salamat po sa mga nagpakita ng pagmamahal sa isang dakilang Pilipino sa araw na ito. And to Senator Rasul, as you journey ahead like the brave Tausug explorers who were your ancestors, I wish you fair winds from the bottom of our hearts and from each and every member of the Senate, including the employees and officials of the Senate. Thank you, Senator Nina Rasul, for your service. We appreciate everything you have done for the Senate and for our country. Thank you. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, next to deliver a co-sponsorship speech is none other than Senator Juan Miguel Zubiri. I move that he be recognized.
Senator Zubiri is recognized to deliver his co-sponsorship speech. You may proceed, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, it is with a heavy heart that we stand here today to honor the life and legacy of our former Senator Santinina Tila Rasul. Being from Mindanao, I have long looked up to Senator Rasul, who hails from Sulu, as the first woman of Muslim faith to be elected in the Senate and the first senator of the faith to be re-elected as well. She paved the way not only for women leaders, but for all leaders in our region, and we are forever grateful to her for that. She was the consummate public servant who devoted her entire career in the service of our people, whether as a public school teacher, a barrio councilor, a provincial board member, a board member of the Ministry of Education, or as senator. Today, her laws still stand as the pillars for gender equality, bringing great gains not just for women, but for the whole country. Chief among her legislative achievements is Republic Act number 7192, or the Women in Development and Nation Building Act, which was instrumental in tearing down discriminatory institutional barriers against women in workplaces and other key institutions, like our military schools, for example. This was also the law that spearheaded the allocation of gender development budget, which remains crucial to our government offices to this day. Senator Rasul was not only a pioneering legislator, she was also a committed advocate of education and literacy. And in fact, she was appointed a UNESCO honorary ambassador for her work in this regard. As a teacher, she developed a phonosyllabic reading and writing program for undereducated adults in her home province of Sulu. And using this program, she eventually founded the Magbasa Kita Foundation to fight adult illiteracy, especially in the underdeveloped areas in Muslim Mindanao. And of course, being a daughter of Muslim Mindanao, she was an outspoken champion of the peace process and was an advisor to the Philippine Center for Islam and Democracy, as well as a member of Cardinal Orlando Quevedo's Friends of Peace, which was a council that pushed for peace negotiations to end the conflict in Muslim Mindanao. Senator Rasul opened so many doors through her work in education, women empowerment, and the peace process, Mr. President. We join her family and the nation in mourning her passing and celebrating and upholding the great work that she has left behind. Once again, thank you for your service, ma'am. We will sorely miss you, the Senate will miss you, and the Filipino people will miss you. Maraming salamat po, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Zubiri. Noted and entered into the records. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, next to deliver his co-sponsorship speech is Senator Joel Villanueva.
Senator Villanueva is recognized to deliver his co-sponsorship remarks. You may proceed, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, Majority Leader. Mr. President, dear colleagues, we extend our deepest sympathies to Senator Santanina Tila Rasul's family and loved ones present here today. Mr. President, today we remember the remarkable life of former Senator Santanina Tila Rasul, whose impact continues to transcend generations of Filipinos. While we mourn the loss of a great legislator, we also stand in appreciation for the full life she has had at the age of 94. We will forever remember the honorable senator who has been immortalized through the laws and reforms she championed to uplift the lives of our people and our beloved nation. Mr. President, as the first and only Muslim woman senator to date, she broke barriers and made positive strides towards upholding women's representation in Philippine governance, an undeniable proof that democracy thrives. Through her advocacy and tireless effort of shaping better lives for women, children, and different minority groups, she has inspired current and future leaders of this nation. One of Senator Rasul's legacies is the Magbasa Kita Foundation Incorporated, MKFI, which ensured the literacy of Filipino children, equipping them with the tools and increasing their potential for a brighter future. The MKFI has also aided in the preservation of human rights and the advancement of humanitarian work nationwide. We are grateful for Senator Rasul's unyielding commitment to create safe spaces and uphold peace in communities affected by conflict. Mr. President, during her 2 terms as a senator from 1987 to 1995, she authored important legislation such as RA 7192 or the Women in Development and Nation Building Act, which eventually resulted in the allocation of Gender and Development or GOD budget in government offices and empowering women to join the Philippine Military Academy. Senator Rasul believed in capacitating our citizenry. We share and believe in her vision of strengthening the Filipino workforce to foster personal growth and achieve socio-economic development. Senator Rasul's life was a testament to the incredible power of excellent public service in making a difference in the lives of our people. May her legacy guide us, legislators and public servants, to always act in pursuit of our duties and our sworn oath to the people. We hope we bear the same passion and grit she has had for public service. Maraming salamat, Ginoong Pangulo. Long live your legacy. And may you rest in peace, Senator Santanina Tila Rasul.
Noted, entered into the records. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, next to deliver a co-sponsorship speech is the Honorable Minority Leader, Senator Aquilino Coco Pimentel.
The Minority Leader is recognized to deliver his co-sponsorship remarks. You may proceed, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. To my esteemed colleagues in the Senate, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to extend our sincerest condolences to the families, to the Tila and the Rasul families here with us. Allow me to mention the ones closest to me. Amina, Salma, even Iba is here, and then Brother Al, of course, is also here, and the rest of the family and clan, Mr. President. As we gather today in this hall, let us take this opportunity to honor and celebrate the life of a woman whose legacy echoes through the pages of Philippine history. Senator Santanina Rasul, the first Muslim woman who dedicated her life to serving the people as a senator from 1987 to 1995. Her leadership was marked by a steadfast commitment to justice, equality, and inclusivity. She was instrumental in championing the welfare of not only Mindanao communities but also of voiceless Filipinos. As a women's rights advocate, she authored Republic Act number 7192, otherwise known as the Women in Development and Nation Building Act. It upholds gender equality and women empowerment. She challenged conventional societal expectations and shattered the stereotypes that had confined women to limited roles, thus empowering women to reach their full potential in community building and to participate in national development initiatives. We just heard PMA female graduates paying tribute to Senator Santanina Rasul. They owe to her their military careers as well as their PMA experience, Mr. President. Senator Rasul put premium in education reform and inclusivity through the institution of the Magbasa Kita Foundation Incorporated. The vision of a literate society was realized. She tirelessly worked to eradicate illiteracy, especially among marginalized Muslim Mindanao communities. Over time, this foundation has helped enhance the literacy rate in Mindanao, reaffirming her perseverance in transforming education into a driver of progress and peace. By championing education and growth for all, Senator Rasul became a living testament that long-standing conflicts in Mindanao could be resolved, fostering a lasting peace. More than being a pillar of the Senate, I will forever cherish and remember her as one of the closest allies of my father, Tatay Nene Pimentel, and our very close family friend. Tatay Nene and Tita Nina both envisioned a peaceful Mindanao and pursued countless efforts to represent the marginalized. Today, as we bid farewell to Senator Rasul, let us cherish the noble life she had, a life full of purpose, selflessness, and inspiration. We mourn the loss of a true public servant, but we will forever celebrate with gratitude the gift of her legacy. So our dear Senator Santanina Rasul, Tita Nina, rest in eternal peace. Your light will continue to shine, guiding each of us toward a principled cause for the Filipino nation. You will always be remembered, Senator Rasul. Thank you very much.
Noted and entered into the records. Majority Floor Leader.
President, Senator, the Deputy Minority Leader, Senator Rizzo Ontiveros, would likewise deliver a co-sponsorship speech.
Senator Risa is recognized to deliver her co-sponsorship remarks. You may proceed, ma'am.
Salamat abi, Mr. President. Mr. President, esteemed colleagues, friends, and family of the late Senator Santanina Rasul, especially my dear friend Amina. Today we gather with heavy hearts to celebrate the life and honor the legacy of a woman who was not only a pioneer in our nation's history, but also a guiding light for generations of Filipinos, Senator Santanina Tila Rasul. As the first Muslim woman senator of the Philippines, Senator Rasul broke barriers that many thought insurmountable. Her election to the Senate was not only a personal triumph, but a victory for inclusivity, diversity, and progress. She represented Mindanao and the Bangsamoro people with unwavering dedication, and she carried their voices and dreams to the halls of power. Her work was rooted in a deep love for her people and a relentless drive to build bridges where there were walls. Senator Rasul championed education reform, women's rights, and the empowerment of marginalized communities. Her commitment to literacy was particularly profound, as she believed that education was the cornerstone of peace and prosperity. Through initiatives like the Magbasa Kita Foundation, she worked tirelessly to eradicate illiteracy and uplift the lives of countless Filipinos. Senator Rasul's leadership was marked by her pursuit of peace in Mindanao. In an era fraught with conflict and misunderstanding, she remained steadfast in her belief that dialogue, understanding, and mutual respect were the keys to a united nation. Her voice was a beacon of hope, reminding us that our diversity is a source of strength, not division. As a champion of women's rights, Senator Rasul inspired a generation of women leaders to rise and make their mark. I count myself as one of those women whose path was paved by political leaders like Senator Rasul. Her courage to challenge norms and redefine roles was a gift to all Filipinas. She proved that leadership is not confined by gender, religion, or geography. It is defined by vision, integrity, and service. Her legacy lives on in the countless women who have found their voices and strength because of her example. It lives on in the communities she touched, the lives she transformed, and the nation she served. Senator Santanina Rasul, you have run your race with distinction, and you have left an indelible mark on the history of our nation. As you take your rest, may we, the people you loved and served, honor your memory by carrying forward the torch you have passed on to us. May Allah grant you eternal peace and reward you for a life of service and significance. You will forever be remembered as a trailblazer, a stateswoman, a hero for the ages. Inshallah, your legacy will live and persist. Mahigpit na yakap kay Amina, mahigpit na yakap sa inyong buong pamilya. Shukran. Salamat tabi, Mr. President.
Tanong mo sigaw kang babayad siya. Francis, tanong mo sigaw kang babayad siya. Majority Floor Leader, thank you, Senator Risa.
President, next to deliver a co-sponsorship speech is Senator Robin Hood Padilla.
Senator Padilla is recognized. You may proceed, sir.
Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo, at sa ating pinunong mayorya. Una po sa lahat ay isang pagpupugay po sa aking pong kaibigan, Ma'am Amina, at sa akin pong teacher, Sir Altila, at sa lahat po ng pamilya. Mga mahal kong kasama, isa pong ipagpapasalamat sa pagkakataong ito upang mailahad ko po ang aking pakikiisa sa naging buhay at legasiya ng ating kapatid, dating Senadora Santanina Tila Rasul. Ako po ay tumitindig ngayong hapon bilang isang Muslim, mambabatas, lingkod bayan at bilang Pilipino. Ginoong Pangulo, para po sa aming mga Muslim, kung saan ang nakararami sa ating mga kapatid ay nakabase sa Mindanao, nabatid naman nating malayo sa Kalakhang, Manila, o kung tawagin ay Imperial Manila. Ang pagkakaroon po ng representasyon sa ating pamahalaan, lalo't higit sa importanteng sangay tulad ng Senado, ay isang napakalaking bagay. Tunay po ang pagkakaroon ng tinig sa gitna ng mga naglalakihang boses ay itinuturing naming isang tagumpay. Ginoong Pangulo, ito po ang katuparang ibinigay sa ating mga kapatid ng nag-iisang Senadora Santanina Tila Rasul. Isang pausog. Dala po ang katapangan ng Sultanate of Sulu mula sa pagiging pampublikong guro sa maliit na bayan ng Siyasi at Sulu noong 1950s, hanggang sa pagiging konsyal ng kanyang baryo at kalaunan ay board member ng probinsya. Walang takot niyang tinanggap ang hamon ng nasyonal na pamamahala bilang commissioner ng National Commission on the Role of Women, miyembro ng Ministry of Education, Culture and Sports, at bilang isang mambabatas ng malaking kapulungan. Malalim po ang pinagsamahan namin ng mahal na senadora. taong 1992, hindi pa po ako Muslim, kasama na po ako na nangampanya ni Ma'am Santanina Rasul sa pagkasenadora. Kasama niya po akong umikot sa ating kapuluan upang ipaabot ang pangako ng pagbabago sa lipunang ating ginagalawan. Masasabi ko pong talagang personal ang aking naging pagsusulong upang magkaroon ng representasyon sa pamahalaan sa Senado mismo ang mga kapatid nating mga Muslim. Hindi po alintana na ang anumang tradisyon o kumbensyon sa kasarian, hindi alintana ang mga kakaharaping mga higante sa Kamaynilaan. Kailanman ay hindi natinag ang kanyang pananaw at pagnanais na isulong ang kanyang advokasya para sa kapayapaan, karapatan ng mga kababaihan, at kapakanan ng mga Muslim at mga kultural na pamayanan. Bilang kauna-unahang babaeng Muslim na senador, hindi po matatawaran ang kanyang kontribusyon. Si Ma'am Santanina Rasul ay may sariling aklat ng ating kasaysayan. Ang dedikasyon ni Senadora Rasul ay isa sa mga nagbukas ng pintuan para sa kababaihan upang mabigyan ng buo at pantay na oportunidad sa mga mahahalagang posisyon sa mga ahensya ng ating pamahalaan. Isa rin siya sa mga naging dahilan kung paano nabigyan ng pagkakataon ang mga kababaihan upang maging bahagi ng mga pagsasanay sa kasundaluhan. Kung wala po siya, hindi po tayo magkakaroon ng first woman armor officer sa Basilan. Ito po yung nagdadrive ng tangke, commander. Nung kasagsagaan po ng panggugulo ng Abu Sayyaf Group sa Mindanao noong 2002. Siya rin po ang nagdala ng pagsasabatas ng Republic Act No. 6949 na nagdideklara ng ika-8 ng Marso bilang pambansang araw ng kababaihan o National Women's Day. Ang mga kwento ng mga pamana ni Senadora Santanina Rasul sa lipunang ating ginagalawan ay sumasalamin sa katotohanang ang pamumuno ay hindi tungkol sa kapangyarihan, bagkus sa iyong buong pusong paglilingkod. Siya ay nagsilbing tanglaw ng pag-asa para sa marami nating mga kababayan sa pagtatatag niya ng Magbasa Kita Foundation Incorporated na nangangahulugang tayo po ay magbasa. Ito po ay isang organisasyong nagsusulong ng pangkalahatang karunungan sa pagbasa at pagsulat. Sapagkat ani nga po ng founder na si Dr. Rasul, ang dunong mula sa edukasyon ay siyang susi upang ang bawat individual ay magkaroon ng makabuluhang partisipasyon sa lipunan. Sa kanyang sipag, dedikasyon at tapat na paglilingkod, hindi po nakapagtataka na noong 1990 ay naitalaga siya na United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization bilang honorary ambassador. Sa palagay ko po ay hindi na magiging sapat ang magagandang salitang ating bibitawan ngayong araw na ito, kumpara sa level na kontribusyon na iniwanan sa atin ng kapatid na Senadora Santanina Rasul. Syukran, Senadora Santanina Rasul, sapagkat kayo po ang nagbigay daan sa aming mga Muslim sa ngayon upang tumindig, magkaroon ng tapang, magkaroon ng karunungan, mga hindi natitinag sa mga makapangyarihan at makapagsulong ng pagbabago. Tunay pong napakalaki ng sapatos na inyo pong iniwan. Pero ang inyo pong mga pamana ay magiging giya namin upang isulong pa ang mga bagay na makakabubuti sa mga kababaihan, sa mga Pilipino at sa mga Muslim. Muli po, kami pong lahat ay nakikiramay. Inna lillahi wa inna ilahi rajiun. Maraming salamat po.
Noted and entered into the records. Majority Leader.
President, Senator Jinggoy Estrada is seeking the floor for his co-sponsorship speech.
Our Senate President Pro Tem, Senator Jinggoy Estrada, is recognized to deliver his co-sponsorship remarks. You may proceed, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is with profound sadness that I join this august chamber in celebrating the life of a distinguished public servant and legacy of an extraordinary woman, Senator Santanina Tila Rasul. Itinuturing ko pong pangalawang magulang si Senator Nina dahil siya po ay tumayong ninang sa aming kasal ng aking may bahay na si Presi noong 1989. Mapalad ang aking ama, si dating Pangulong Joseph Estrada, dahil nakasama niya nung ika-8 Kongreso ang kauna-unahang babaeng Muslim na nahalal bilang senador. I can only imagine the level of discourse and debates that she engaged in during those times, given her unique background and viewpoints that certainly enriched the plenary deliberations. Being an honor student all her life during her elementary up to college days, and is armed with vast experience in public service as a public school teacher who eventually engaged in executive and legislative work from the local government up to the office of the president. A visionary leader and trailblazer, Senator Nina was undeniably ahead of her time. She broke barriers in a traditionally male-dominated political landscape, paving the way for greater representation of women in governance. You catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. That was her favorite catchphrase, according to her daughter, Amina. And that's how she got things done in the Senate in the 8th and 9th Congresses. Pinairal niya ang pagiging nanay, kapatid, at pakikitungo sa kanyang mga kasamahan para makangalap ng suporta sa kanyang mga isinusulong ng mga panukalang batas. Tinaguran siyang puso ng Senado dahil sa kanyang malasakit at hindi matatawarang dedikasyon sa kapakanan ng mga nasa marginalized sector, lalong-lalo na sa mga kababaihan, kabataan at mga komunidad sa Bangsamoro region. Inclusivity, upliftment of the status of women, and promotion of quality education marked her legislative accomplishments, which benefited generations of Filipinos. Her commitment to the cause of literacy and accessible education for all as an anchor for sustainable national development continued outside the halls of the Senate through the Magbasa Kita Foundation. And as I joined the nation in mourning the loss of an accomplished stateswoman, patriot, and Filipina, this representation takes comfort in the fact that her legacy of selfless public service and a better Philippines lives on through the millions of Filipinos whose lives were positively transformed. My sincere condolences to the entire family, her wonderful grandchildren and siblings. Paalam, Ninang Nina. Baunin po ninyo ang aming pagpupugay at pasasalamat sa inyong tapat na serbisyo sa ating bansa. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Senator Estrada. Noted and entered into the records. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, Senator Poe would like to have her co-sponsorship speech inserted in the records, as well as Senator Rafi Tulfo, Senator Lauren Legarda as well, Senator Nancy Binay, Senator Revilla would like to have his co-sponsorship speech inserted in the records. Senator Pia Cayetano is seeking the floor. Senator J.B. Ejercito would like to have his co-sponsorship speech inserted in the records, Mr. President. As well as Senator Sherwin Gatchalian. Senator Pia Cayetano is seeking the floor, Mr. President. I move that.
Prior to recognizing Senator Cayetano, the manifestation of the Majority Leader is duly noted. The respective speeches of the aforementioned senators are hereby entered into the records and deemed made part thereof. Senator Pia Cayetano is recognized to deliver her co-sponsorship remarks. You may proceed, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I rise to co-sponsor Senate Resolution Number 1244, expressing profound sympathy and sincere condolences on the death of former Senator Santanina Tila Rasul. Today, we take a moment to honor the life of a truly remarkable individual, former Senator Santanina Rasul. Amid our sorrow over her passing, we find solace in celebrating the profound and lasting contributions she made to our nation. Senator Rasul was the first female Muslim senator. She was also one of the first women senators in Congress who served for 2 consecutive terms from 1987 to 1995. Her tenure in the Senate was marked by her earnest commitment to justice, equality, and the empowerment of every Filipino, particularly women, children, and the marginalized communities. She was the founder and chair of the Magbasa Kita Foundation, which focuses on literacy and education, especially in areas that need it most. One of the annual events in March that many of us, particularly the women senators, celebrate is March 8th as the National Women's Day in the Philippines. This is by virtue of a law, RA 6949, that Senator Rasul sponsored. This annual event has been instrumental over the decades in educating the public about the role of women in society and recognizing our valuable contribution despite discrimination and challenges that many women still face. Also, the younger generation might assume that women were always a part of the Philippine Military Academy, but I still remember a time that this was not the case. Before Republic Act number 7192, or Women in Development and Nations Building Act, became a law, there were no women in the Philippine Military Academy. This law was authored by Senator Nina Rasul. She not only promoted gender equality, but literally opened the doors of the Philippine Military Academy to women. She was an inspiration to me as a young and first-time senator. Through her work as a woman and as a mother, she broke down barriers for us women in public service. I extend my heartfelt condolences to her family, especially to my good friend Amina. May Senator Rasul rest in eternal peace, and may her memory continue to inspire us, where the rights of women and Filipino Muslims are upheld and equality for all is assured. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Pia. Your remarks are duly noted and entered into the records. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, this representation reserved the right to speak last. Mr. President, I rise today with a deep sense of respect and gratitude to co-sponsor this resolution honoring the life and legacy of former Senator Santanina Rasul. The recent passing is a deep loss to our nation, but her contributions will continue to inspire our people. Her advocacy for women's rights was further cemented with the passage of Republic Act 6949, declaring March 8 as a National Women's Day, highlighting her commitment to elevating women's role in society. Senator Rasul's dedication to education and literacy was evident throughout her career. We've heard several statements about her beginnings as a public school teacher to founding the Magbasa Kita Foundation, which empowered countless Filipinos in marginalized communities. Her efforts in peace talks underscored her commitment to achieving lasting peace in Mindanao. Her life's work as a public servant, educator, and peace advocate serves as a lasting inspiration, particularly for women and minorities, to overcome challenges and engage in nation building. Today, we extend our deepest condolences to the family of Senator Rasul. Her legacy will forever be etched in our hearts and in our nation's history. Thank you, Mr. President.
Noted and entered into the records. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, there being no other member who wishes to interpolate or propose amendments to the measure, I move that we adopt proposed Senate Resolution 1244, taking into consideration proposed Senate Resolution 1246, subject to style. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, proposed Senate Resolution number 1244, taking into account proposed Senate Resolution number 1246, is hereby adopted and adopted unanimously by the senators here present.
Mr.
Majority
President,
Leader.
with the permission of the body, I move that all present members be made co-authors of the resolution together with Senator Cynthia Villar, who would want to have her speech inserted into records. I so move, Mr. President.
Noted and entered into the records.
1 minute suspension, Mr. President.
Chair declares a minute suspension and would like to invite the family of the late Nina Rasul to kindly join us in the restroom as we give you a copy of the resolution that we passed. Session is suspended. Majority Leader.
Yes, Mr. President, our Majority Leader, Senator Francis Tolentino, would like to avail of the privilege. I move that he be recognized.
Senator Tolentino is recognized to deliver his privileged speech. You may proceed, sir.
Maraming salamat po, Mr. President, esteemed colleagues, sa ating mga kababayan. Magandang gabi po sa inyo lahat. Mr. President, when we speak of progress, we can argue that our nation's most significant roadblocks lies within our roads. We fall victim to this every day, from pernicious traffic jams to sneaking queues of commuters for mass transportation. Naalala ko pa ho, nung MMDA chairman ako, puro ganito po yung problema natin. The systemic problem impacts both motorcycle riders and four-wheeled vehicle owners. Ito pong problema natin sa gross backlog of license plates. An alarming backlog of 12.5 million license plates was reported by the Land Transportation Office in February 2024. This staggering number includes 9.155 million motorcycle plates and 3.393 million motor vehicle plates. This data speaks of brazen disregard for millions of Filipinos who rely on their vehicles for delivery, for everyday living, and some for their means of livelihood. Despite efforts to implement a 24-hour production shift, this backlog persists, raising concerns about LTO's operational efficiency, resource allocation, and strategic planning. We dare ask, Mr. President, does LTO have too much on its plate? It can barely deliver its mandate for license plates. In March of this year, atin pong sinuportahan yung Senate Bill 2555 at ang LTO po ay nag-project that it would be able to produce 3.7 million plates by mid-2024. Despite the admission of shortcomings, the LTO issued Memorandum Circular Number VDM 2024-2721. This directive aimed to prohibit the use of temporary plates starting September 1, 2024 with penalties for non-compliance. Mr. President, tinutulan po natin ito at napa-extend po natin yung deadline sa December 31, 2024. While the extension offers some relief, we must acknowledge that the underlying problem remains. The backlog continues, raising serious questions about LTO's capacity to fulfill its commitments. Disyembre na po ngayon. December 3, Mr. President, at ilang tulog na lang, January na, 2025. Nasaan po ang sinasabi ng LTO na bago matapos ang taon ito ay maibibigay na nila ang plakang inaasam-asam ng ating mga kababayan, lalong-lalo na po ang mga motorcycle owners, motorcycle riders. Hindi pa po yata ito matutupad dahil hanggang ngayon ay marami pa rin naghihintay para sa kanilang mga plaka. Mga kababayan, 27 araw na lang o 28 araw na lang mula ngayon ang napipintong deadline. Kataasan ay extension na naman ang ating makukuha kaysa sa mga nakabinbing mga plaka. Last October 23, during a Senate hearing, the LTO admitted that they would be able to complete the vehicle plates by June 2025. So makikita na nasunog na naman ang targeted date from the end of the year to June 2025. Mr. President, the inability to resolve this backlog undermines public trust and confidence in our government agencies, the Department of Transportation in general, and the Land Transportation Office in particular. It likewise emphasizes the glaring problem in our national transport system and highlights a pressing need for a systemic reform. As we look to the future, we must hold the LTO accountable and push for effective solutions. We must advocate for increased production, streamlined processes, and better communication. The promise of timely delivery of license plates is not just an administrative issue. It is about restoring trust in our transportation system and ensuring that every vehicle owner can operate with peace of mind. The stark reality highlights an ongoing struggle to meet the demand we have all felt. I call upon the LTO to provide a clear and actionable plan to resolve the backlog. Ipaliwanag nyo sa amin, nasaan na po ang mga plaka, saan may problema at nasaan po ang solusyon. I urge the LTO to prioritize transparency and management efficiency and take decisive action to address this crisis. Malapit na po ang December 31. Let us work together to ensure that our transportation system is fair, efficient, and responsive to the needs of vehicle owners. No vehicle owner should be left in uncertainty and anxiety, nor face penalties for systemic failures beyond their control. Together, we can resolve this crisis and restore public confidence in our transportation infrastructure and system. Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo.
Majority Floor Leader.
Yes, Mr. President, before I act on the move to refer the privileged speech of the Majority Leader, I'd like to associate myself on his privileged speech. Likewise, the reason why we offered the Motorcycle Crime Prevention Act is specifically to address the issue of the backlog. No? Doble nga po yung kinakailangang plate number para sa motorsiklo, hindi na nga po ma-serve yung at the time 9 million ang backlog, ngayon 12 million na. And this is a concern for peace and order, no, Mr. President, because most of the motorcycles that is being used for crime, yung pong mawalang plaka, and I support Senator Tolentino for his push, no, that the LTO act on this problem of the backlog, so that the peace and order problem or that motorcycles will not be used in crime. So with that, Mr. President, I move that we refer the privileged speech of Senator Tolentino and all the to the Committee on Public Services. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none. Motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Yes, Mr. President, Senator Bongo would like to insert to the records his co-sponsorship speech for Senate Resolution number 1244.
Any objection? Hearing none. So inserted.
Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
Secretary General is directed to comply.
Additional reference business on committee reports number 371 to 420 submitted jointly by the Committees on Public Services and Finance on various House bills establishing, converting, and upgrading LTO offices in various parts of the country as follows. House Bill number 7514, 8152, 8186, 8279, 8281, 8282, 10835, 9048, 5911, 8280, 9468, 9049, 9469, 9626, 9627, 9649, 9758, 6556, 10779, 1077, 10780, 10782, 8283, 8284, 1084, 1085, 10781, 10776, 10775, 10837, 10838, 10839, 5731, 5659, 10774, 9651, 9625, 9047, 10778, 4275, 9757, 3401, 10773, 10671, 9664, 9655, 9654, 9653, 9650, and 9652. Calendar for ordinary business.
To the calendar for ordinary business. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, pursuant to Section 18 of the Rules of the Senate and upon the instruction of the Chairperson of the Committee on Public Service, I manifest the creation of a subcommittee to deliberate on Senate Bill number 2876 and House Bill number 10926, the bills on Manila Electric Company franchise, and such other bills which may be referred to the Committee on Public Services, covering the same topic with Senator Joel Villanueva as chairperson. I so manifest, Mr. President.
Noted. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Wednesday, December 4, 2024.
Session is adjourned until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Wednesday, December 4, 2024.